All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Conspiracy or Not, Here We Come. This is Friday, March 16th, and I am super pleased to announce that we have yet again one of our favorite guests, Mr. Charles Kos. Hello, Charles. How are you?
Hello, Aaron. Oh, I'm very well, thank you. And thanks for the awesome intro. And I really missed you guys, and great to be back.
You are without a doubt, Charles, you are without a doubt one of our favorite YouTubers, one of our favorite guests to have. This is I speak for myself, this is one of my absolute favorite subjects to be covering. And I'm just thrilled to be having you back again. And we're going to go a little bit deep tonight into ancient Egypt, the functions of the pyramids, and hopefully Charles has some sort of presentation prepared, perhaps some screen shares or something. And I know that we're going to be talking about a lot about the pyramids this evening, and hopefully he's got some screen shares and things that he'll be sharing with us. Before we get started, I will say hello to Bart and Amy. How are you guys doing? Make sure everybody's good.
Hello. I'm hanging in here pretty well. How about yourself?
Bart, Everybody? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been another weird week in between shows.
Yeah. Speaking of weird weeks, let me just run through a couple of quick announcements. If anybody wasn't paying attention, yesterday there was a bridge collapse in Florida. It was a pedestrian bridge, and it happened to be on the Ides of March day, which is a kind of another one of those curious incidences. I'm not calling it a hoax. I think it was a real event, but it was highly curious that it did fall on one of those ritual cult Ides of March days. It also coincidentally happened to be the day that Julius Caesar was supposedly assassinated, and we will be speaking with Derek from Gematrinator. Amy, is it next week or the week after?
30th. Next pop.
Okay, so I'm really going to be curious to see what Derek has to say about the numbers involving that event. Again, I'm not calling this a hoax. Things do happen. Tragic things happen. We call our show Conspiracy or Not because we personally are not auto hoaxers. We don't think everything is a hoax. I think this is probably one of those tragic things that just happened. From what I've seen, I only have one or two small, and I would only call them yellow flags, not major, nothing major. And I haven't dug deep into it. I've been busy looking into the subject matter of our guest, as I usually do. I spend my week researching our upcoming guests and our upcoming topics. The other announcement that I wanted to make was that my channel, which I'm using right now, my current backup channel, Rufus Cat 2, I'm sitting on my second strike as of this morning. This morning I got a strike for a video that I personally deleted almost 1 month ago. Now, I had heard about this phenomenon. I had heard through the grapevine that YouTube was retroactively striking channels and videos that had already been deleted. And it was just something that I had heard, I had not confirmed. But I can screen share if necessary. And if it's really not necessary, if anybody's interested, Paul Romano from Pockets of the Future channel, he uploaded a video yesterday. I think it was just yesterday. If not, it was 2 days ago. So literally yesterday, he uploaded a video with exactly the same problem. And I screen shared, or I shared the link on Skype with my friends here, announcing that, oh my God, Paul got a strike for a video that he deleted a month ago. And lo and behold, this morning, I myself fell victim to the same anomaly. So the video that I had uploaded and deleted, it was up for only a couple of days. And then I thought, by the way, the video was called David Hogg, the Actual Actor. And it was showing our young teenage friend, supposed victim of the Florida school shooting, who on Anderson Cooper.
No. Sorry, Aaron, not victim, survivor.
Oh, well, victim, survivor, that's semantics. Either way, survivor, yes. Okay, so David Hogg, a fairly well-known character at this point, most people have heard of him, was on Anderson Cooper, loud and proud with his FBI father, saying, and I quote, "I'm not an actor in any way, shape, or form." And yet we, and when I say we, I mean those of us in the quote-unquote truth community, somebody found a video where David was actually acting as an actual actor in an actual movie that was produced by the school, because David was in the drama club. He was a journalist student. And so the classes that he supposedly attended were an AV, audiovisual course that was for journalists and actors. They produced a movie. The movie was called Lone, L-O-N-E, and where David was actually acting. So he's on Anderson Cooper saying things like, and I will quote again, he said, "I'm not an actor in any way, shape, or form." Well, sorry, David, you are an actor, and I just wanted to make that distinction. So I uploaded a video showing that he was, in fact, an actual actor, and I left the video up for a couple of days, maybe 2 days. Honestly, I don't even think it was up for 24 hours. Maybe it was 2 days. Nevertheless, I saw the writing on the wall. Everybody and their brother was getting strikes and terminations because they were trying their best to expose what they could about this Parkland shooting, all the weird anomalies involved in the story. So I decided to delete the video, and that was at least 3 weeks ago. And this morning I woke up to find that I had been struck. So I just want to let everybody know that it's a real thing. And I've shared the screenshots with Amy, and maybe she'll be putting a video together soon, because right now I'm on my second strike. I can no longer upload videos, and certainly cannot host videos. I cannot host live streams. That's why we did last week's on Amy's channel, and that is why we're doing this week on Bart's channel. And I'm currently under a 2-week suspension. I can no longer upload videos for 2 more weeks. So maybe Amy will put a video together and show my screen captures. And another interesting anomaly involved with that is that during the appeal process... Go ahead.
Put things together for you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Amy, are you underwater again?
I'm just saying that.
Okay. All right. So just real quick, one other anomaly involved with that is during the appeal process, where they give you a chance to appeal the video strike, there's a screen capture that shows that there is no button for appeal. So they gave me a strike for a video that I deleted 3 weeks ago, And there was literally no option. There's no button whatsoever for me to even try to appeal the strike. Okay, so that's out of the way. One more thing I wanted to say was literally 10 minutes before we became live tonight here on this particular show, the news broadcast that Trip Halstead has died. So if you've been following this story, this is the story of a very young boy. He's now 7 years old. This is a 5-year-old story. So 5 years ago in 2012, Trip Halstead, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, young boy, had a tree branch fall, strike him on the head, injured him rather severely, and it's been a national story. This happened here in Georgia. So for me, this is big time, like it's local news for me, but this is a national story. And for anybody who has been following the story of Trip Halstead, his injuries, his recovery, I have sad news to report that they have just announced that the young man has just passed away. And from what I understand, that it was some sort of pneumonia-related thing, that he was having problems breathing this morning when he woke up. And that's really all I know at this point. So I just wanted to announce that. And I'm sorry to bring all the bad news, but I've got good news. The good news is we have Charles Kos, and we're going to put all this nasty, creepy, weird cult stuff behind us. We're going to put all of our hoax. Well, I shouldn't say hoax, because Charles, you're all about the hoax. It's just different kind of hoax, isn't it?
Well, absolutely.
You're all about the hoax of the history and the hoax of human origin and the hoax of our ancestry and our ancient history. So once again, thank you so much, Charles. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm really thrilled to have you back.
Well, thank you so much, Aaron. And it really is good to be back, and I love you guys. And yeah, it has been a while. And just on that last point, you were mentioning that guy dying of pneumonia. And do you think that the flus are getting worse, and more people are dying?
Well,
I think you're being told they're getting worse.
Exactly. I would have to agree 100% with what Amy just said. I think we're being told they're getting worse. Now, on that, I would also say that I know several people who have come down with, or at least been diagnosed, or they say that they have come down with the flu. Okay. Maybe a little more than usual. Now, I don't know. See, this is where we're going to get into some really sticky territory, because without a full diagnosis, a full blood test with the virus blood tests, it's going to be really hard to tell. For anybody who's interested in the flu phenomenon, I would urge you to look into the work and reports of John Rappaport, who is a medical journalist. He's one of the most respected researchers in our troop or field of truth community people. You can find him on Jimmy Church Fade to Black Radio. He does every Thursday he does a 30-minute broadcast, a 30-minute report. You can also find John Rappaport on his own website, which is called nomorefakenews.com. By the way, that website is 10 or 15 years older than the term fake news. So he has actually started that website many, many, many years before any of us even heard the term fake news. But he is a certified, legitimate medical journalist, and you'll be shocked at some of the things that he has to say about Zika virus, about flu, about vaccinations. So if anybody's interested, go and check out John Rappaport, what he has to say about the flu and those types of things. Now, when it comes to the flu, it's important to realize that this day and age, there's a lot of pushback from a hell of a lot of people who are refusing to be vaccinated, okay? Now, it is a fact, this is a fact, that mercury is still in the flu vaccination, okay? I don't care what they tell you, it's still in there. Go look, go dig deep. it is still in the flu vaccination. So the point is, there's a lot of people pushing back saying, I don't want the vaccination. I don't need my flu shot. I don't want my kids getting your mercury, your aluminum, your squalene. I don't want that shit in my kids. I don't want it in my body. And I suspect, Charles, that what we're hearing on the news about so many people dying, because there really has been a lot of news coverage of all of these supposed flu deaths from the flu. I suspect that it is it's a pushback from the pharmaceutical industry, who, in my opinion, are losing their ass because a lot of people are not getting the jab. What do you think?
Well, I think you're probably right. I think there's more than one reason. I think it's also the sun. The sun has changed. There's a book by Thor Heyerdahl, one of his first books. He went to a Pacific island. He wanted to escape civilization. He took his girlfriend when he was about 20, and he lived there for a year. He wanted to live like the primitive humans. And he eventually found an island, totally isolated. He thought, what a Garden of Eden. And he actually wiped out most of that island's population by giving them the flu. So, and they took it quite lightly. They thought because they have a spiritual existence, they thought, okay, that's just how it is, you know. And I think that if you look at Earth's population, it's gone from 1 billion in 1900 to now something over 7 billion. What's the reason? And one of the reasons is the sun. Agriculture, the sun's become more intense. And this is partly what the whole global warming thing's about. I think it's mostly the sun. But the sun has also changed color. Have you been aware that people are saying the sun's changed color? It's changed from yellow to white.
To almost white.
Exactly.
Yep, I've noticed that.
It's become fluorescent. And I think what's happened is when it was a different wavelength before, because the stars can probably change colors, you know, in line with the electric universe, the plasma cosmology stuff. But I think what's happening is the sun's no longer disinfecting. It was disinfecting the Earth with its rays during the 20th century, allowing a population explosion. People's kids stopped dying. And they did associate that with vaccinations in the 19th century. They thought, oh, okay, we're vaccinating, it's getting better. And yeah, vaccines can work. But then I think the sun had a huge effect in boosting the agriculture with the sunspots, boosting the population, stopping people from dying. Suddenly the flu after the Great Flu after the First World War was no longer an issue. And it was like, it used to be life and death. And then after that, it became a non-entity. But last few years, boy, you know, I mean, 2011, I had the whooping cough. That lasted for months. And I was vaccinated against that when I was small. So, and it came back because they said, well, it mutated. And that was supposed to be worth a lifetime of protection. And then last year, wow, that was quite a big flu. I was sick for maybe 8 weeks. A friend of mine was sick for 4 months, and we were actually joking that he had AIDS or something. And he only got better. He got sick in flu season, then he only got better in January, which is at the height of our summer, I guess, when the vitamin D levels are coming back. So, and he was just a young guy. He's a young guy, 26. So I think something's happening. Maybe the sun, maybe something else, but I think the sun is the biggest thing in the solar system. It's huge compared to us. It's everything compared to us, and we just live in its outer atmosphere. So for people to say that the sun doesn't cause, you know, temperature changes on Earth and everything is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Anyway, what do you think?
Well, the only thing I would say to that is when you talk about being sick for 8 weeks, I, as a teenager, was diagnosed with mononucleosis, which they call the kissing disease. And I was bedridden with flu-like symptoms for about that long, about 8 weeks. Now, in this day and age, I'm certain that I would have been diagnosed with the flu. No doubt they would have just written me off as said, oh, you got the flu like everybody else. So without having the blood test and confirm that you are virally infected with the actual flu virus, then I would say I probably wouldn't trust a typical diagnosis these days. Back to the work of John Rappaport, who says that, and now I spoke about this and I've got notes packed away. A couple of weeks ago, I covered this, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so forgive me if I get the exact numbers wrong. But out of the many thousands of people that supposedly die every year from the flu, that the vast, vast majority of those people actually die from what they call flu-related illness. And that includes pneumonia and literally a myriad of other types of illnesses which they deem flu-related. And because of the way that they categorize things these days, that it all gets lumped into one category and they call it the flu. And so then they can go on television and say, oh, this many people died from the flu. And they make it very simple and straightforward, but it's not factual.
Yep. I think also systemically compromised immune systems are a big factor through our diet, through metal buildups, through various toxins.
Vaccinations.
Well, I mean, aside from the vaccinations, but yes.
There seems to be a large body of research that shows that if you get the flu vaccination at a young age, and I don't mean really young, I just mean at a relatively young age, that you are henceforth for the rest of your life susceptible to the flu. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of, it weakens
Oh,
you.
goody.
Yes, and I'm not kidding. And anybody interested in this topic, I'm not kidding. Go look at John Rappaport. Go check out what he has to say on his website, nomorefakenews.com. And also you can catch him every Thursday on Jimmy Church Fade to Black Radio. And go to Jimmy Church and go back 2 or 3 months or 6 months. Go back to the Zika virus scare and outbreak and listen to what John Rappaport has to say. You will be shocked. And this is a man, John Rappaport, who is literally he's classified as a medical journalist. So when this guy talks about flu, vaccinations, and medical situations, this is a guy that you can pretty much take to the bank.
Bart,
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if you were born in winter.
I was not. I was born April 19th.
Okay, because I think there's some study done that, and this kind of proves Lamarckian evolution, that kids born in winter, they have compromised immune systems, and they're just more sickly in general in adulthood because their mothers received less vitamin D while that child was being developed. So, and it's interesting that is somehow passed down, and that influences the immune system for the rest of that person's life. And it's passed down into the genes. I think it's totally Lamarckian. If you guys are of Lamarckian evolution, where it was an idea that, say, a giraffe.
Can you spell that?
The guy's name was Lamarck. And
yeah,
he was.
There's a little. You're breaking up just a little bit. I want to make it very clear. Spell that for us, if you at least the best you can.
Okay, I'm Lamarck.
Lamarck.
Lamarck. Okay,
you got it. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And see what humans tend to do. They tend to when they get a new theory that's accepted, they tend to throw out everything from the old theories, even though the old theories have something going for them. And so Lamarckism is the idea that, say, in general terms, and they tried to prove this in the Soviet Union. So Stalin tried an experiment where, and I don't know the results, where he tried establishing all those Arctic cities, putting people there to see if the children would be more cold resilient. And I don't know what the result was, but I think a lot of those people are quite happy living up there if they don't come down to adapt themselves to a warmer city. That they think that that's all they've had. And so in general terms, it's the neck of the giraffe became longer so it could essentially reach the leaves of the high trees, because they're always stretching. So because they're always stretching, the genes are passed down to the children to have a longer neck. So that's Lamarckism, whereas the Darwinism is sort of the ones who can't reach the trees are wiped out. Because Darwin himself was a hunter. He used to go around shooting birds, and he thought, damn, the clever birds are getting away, and that's how he came up with natural selection. So, and they actually don't like to talk about that aspect of how he developed evolution. But anyway, I think there's a lot of Lamarckism going on with disease resistance, and it'll play a part in evolutionary theory in future as well. Because evolution too I think all the sciences are wrong. Actually, they're all kind of hoaxes in a way.
Well, you're in the right place to discuss those kind of things.
Ever since I came across Lamarckian evolution theory as competing with Darwinian evolution theory, I thought, hold on, this is just another case where the better theory got eclipsed by the substandard theory. It's kind of like, Freud is a bigger deal than Jung, or Edison is a bigger deal than Tesla. It's sort of like the idea of propping up number two, and the better theory, which may be a little bit more complicated, or maybe a little bit more difficult to wrap your mind around. Then it's baby out with the bathwater. And then a cult forms around the number two and then the number three theory, and the better theory fades into oblivion. And then maybe somebody down the way digs it up, but then there's this big struggle to get anybody even paying attention to it, because the cult built around whatever the prevailing theory is so strong and entrenched. So,
well, I've got a couple of things to add. When Charles mentioned Darwin, according to John Taylor Gatto, and this is a fact, that Darwin and his family were fantastically wealthy people. They were financing a naturalist who basically did all of the footwork, legwork, field attributed to Darwin, and that this person, and forgive me, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, was in South America doing some work. He came down with, I think, dengue fever and subsequently died. And immediately the Darwin family sent emissaries to collect all of this man's papers and work and research, and that Darwin himself did not actually write his theory of evolution, that was actually derived from a naturalist that the Darwin family was funding. Now, aside from that, Bart had just mentioned Edison, and here's an interesting tidbit of information that I just learned this week about Thomas Edison. Now, we all know that, now this may not be true in other schools, like in Europe. I understand that if you go to school in Europe, that you will learn about Tesla, but not in America. If you go to school in America, Edison is the guy that they put on a pedestal, and that's the guy you learn about in school. Here's a nice fun fact that most people don't know about Thomas Edison, that he was a conniving, lying, backstabbing bastard who would electrocute animals, dogs, cats, and even publicly an elephant. He publicly executed animals by electrocuting them in order to show the public that Tesla's idea of alternating current was dangerous. It was a big propaganda stunt, And Thomas Edison is personally responsible for electrocuting publicly, openly, publicly, electrocuting animals, including an elephant. This is a fact. So whatever you think of Thomas Edison, throw it out the window. He's a bastard.
It's true. It's true. He called it. Didn't he call it Westinghouse those elephants because Tesla was a Westinghouse employee, and he thought, "Wow, look what this alternating current can do to the elephant." It's because with the alternating current, if you're electrocuted with alternating current, you touch the wires, your hands will contract around those wires and hold on to them. Whereas I think with direct current, you might bounce off, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to test it. But yeah.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that your muscles do contract. I have been electrocuted because I'm a contractor. I work with all kinds of things, and occasionally, through no fault of my own, I have had very little choice in the matter, except rather than refuse it and walk away from the job, there are situations where certain electrical operations have to be handled with live wire. There's no other choice. And I'll just give you very, very quickly a situation where I'm working in an office. It was a financial lending house. And we were doing a small rewiring job. It was not a situation where we were able to shut down power to the building because it would have killed all the computers for all the people that were currently under the process of obtaining loans and things like that. And then to what I had to call IT to come and reset all the computers. So I had to do this situation where I was wiring a simple outlet, and it was hot. And I did manage to accidentally touch the wrong wires, and absolutely, and it wasn't the first time in my life, but that's a fact. You do contract. So there's that. So that was electric, that was AC, and yes, your muscles do contract. I don't know if DC current is the opposite effect. I have no idea about that. So that's all. My personal little anecdote.
Yeah, and it didn't kill you though.
No, typically no, and I have been shocked many times. However, there was one instance where my muscles did contract, and when they did contract, they contracted even more tightly around the two wires that were making the connection. And I was actually very lucky that I did not suffer a death or a fatal electrocution because. And I don't even know how I got out of it, but I remember this uncontrollable noise like being kicked in the gut, came out of me, and everybody in the office turned and looked, and I was rather embarrassed. And there was a moment where I literally could not let go. So it was probably the most frightening electrocution. And I've had several instances where I've had quick little shocks. But there was one instance where it was kind of scary and couldn't let go.
Makes me wonder how they fried those poor elephants. They must have really, really ramped up the amps and the volts and all that.
Imagine what it would take to electrocute an elephant.
Yeah, and
how horrific! What kind of horrific psychopathic bastard do you have to be to do that? Anyway, that's Thomas Edison. Yeah, that's not why we're here.
Very desperate, business-wise, to do that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, speaking of electricity, what does electricity have to do with the pyramids, Charles?
Wow, that's an interesting question, because we have the Ark of the Covenant, and we all know what happened in the Bible when, I believe wasn't it the two children of Zadok the priest who were also guarding the Ark of the Covenant? And wasn't one of them called Aaron? I'm not sure, but a few Aarons getting electrocuted, but unfortunately, and they went into the tabernacle. The tabernacle, everything in the Bible is mistranslated. So the tabernacle means tent. They went into the tent, uncovered the ark, and boom, they got electrocuted by strange fire.
And isn't it interesting that the Ark of the Covenant the ark. It's written as ARK, and yet we today refer to an electrical arc as ARC. It's the same word with only, one consonant change.
The spelling is different, yes.
It's still an arc. But go ahead,
I think
Charles.
that synchronism actually proves that it was electricity because it's a link, you see. And there's no coincidences.
It's an etymological link, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a link through time, showing us what it was. And that arc is a really tricky thing to analyze, because if we look at, because in my videos I go back, I talk about how if there was a super civilization, it was a really, really, really long time ago. Because I know Zecharia Sitchin and other people, they placed all this high technology stuff rather recently in the past, within the last 10,000 years. But it's so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that because all that was just Stone Age times, and it's really stretching it. So if there was high tech, it was a long time ago. So that means the high tech stuff that's in the Bible regarding the ark is possibly from books written a really, really long time ago, and they've transcribed bits and pieces of those old books. And I think that the whole Bible is actually, originally it was a tale of super technology. It was some kind of science fiction, but every time they add to it, they have to take something out, or it gets too big. It turns into, otherwise it would become like the Indian Mahabharata, which is, if you've ever seen it, it's a library shelf.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more in that Bible, and it's all gone. And one of the things that was in there would have been, I suppose, the pyramids. And the pyramids haven't survived. And the thing is this. We know that the Ark of the Covenant is the same size as the Khufu's so-called sarcophagus, which happens to be right in the middle of the Great Pyramid. And we also know that the Jews supposedly took this Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. If it was the original Ark they were carrying, it might have been a replica. The original Ark story might be far older. They took it to Jerusalem. They later on built a temple which was designed to enshrine the Ark in a place in the temple called the Holy of Holies. So in other words, it may have been enshrined in the Great Pyramid, and later on, they replaced the pyramid with the temple. And it seems if the pyramid was designed to hold the ark, they were replacing the pyramid with the temple. And that temple, if you look at the floor plan, I might see if I can bring it up. It's not really designed to admit people. It's kind of isolated like the pyramid is. And I find that fascinating.
Several things come to mind, Charles. Let's see if any of this rings potentially true for you. So you said tabernacle actually meant tent, and then the word tent reminded me of, well, a tent shape, and isn't the pyramid itself sort of tent shaped? So couldn't the tabernacle actually be a mistranslation of the pyramid itself? And then the other thing that came to mind.
Yes, I think, you know what? Absolutely. Everything in the Bible has been absolutely mistranslated, mixed up, absolutely ruined by people who just couldn't understand what was going on.
And then speaking of ruined, so if there is anything to this this story, this narrative, if they had taken what was in the pyramid, and the pyramid is quite a large structure. And it appears to be solid, and if there was some sort of a device, let's call it the Ark of the Covenant. Who knows what it was, what its other names could have been. If that was, if that was in there serving some sort of purpose, and then it was removed, and then it was placed in a building that was not designed like the pyramid was designed, could that not have maybe and then they try to activate it? Could that not maybe have led to the destruction of the shoddy building that they put it into? It
could have. And in fact, why is the Bible full of prophecies that the temple is going to be destroyed. I mean, did they think it was going to explode or something? I mean, is that some memory of the power of the Ark of the Covenant? Because it's not just electricity, is it? I mean, there's another reference to the Ark of the Covenant having killed 50,070 people at a place called Beth Shemesh. And somehow the Ark wiped out these people. Now, is that mixed up with a story of a massacre? Did they simply hold up the Ark? Or did the Ark actually lash out? And I think that the way it goes, the Ark lashed out somehow and it killed those people. So how did it do it? And if so, does that explain the tremendous insulation, if you can call it that, around the king's chamber, which makes up the Great Pyramid? Because in truth, it's a highly insulated structure designed to keep a constant temperature, insulation from the desert, and it's a constant temperature, it's a constant moisture in there. I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, from what I understand, the Ark was a container which is equated to a modern version of a capacitor, which, like a battery, stores energy and discharges that energy. In order to kill 50,000, which is a huge number of people, unless they were all gathered together, it's hard to imagine that much discharge slaughtering that many people. So you may be right. It may be mistranslated or misunderstood or misrepresented. It might have been a slaughter that was attributed to the Ark. Maybe those people were killed over the Ark. Maybe another army came in and took and killed everybody and stole the Ark, and then said, hey, look what the Ark did, because we know what happens. The winners of the war always are the guys who write the history, so hard to tell on that one. One thing we know for sure is that not only were the pyramids an electrical device, and still are to this day, even with pieces that we are known to be missing, that the pyramid, in fact, are you guys familiar with Siemens? This is a huge electronics company today.
Yeah. Siemens?
Okay. The world's first electronics billionaire is Sir Charles William Siemens. Okay. And he founded the world's biggest electronics corporation based on experiments that he conducted on the summit of the Great Pyramid of Cheops.
Huh.
Okay. And you can look this up. He said that the obelisks were capturing static electricity from the atmosphere, is what he said. That's what the job of the obelisks was. They were capturing static electricity. Now, biblical scripture describes the Hebrew Levites wore grounding straps around their ankles to prevent electrical shock. There are also stories in the Bible where symptoms from people who got too close to the Ark suffered symptoms that are similar to what we recognize today as radiation sickness. They were losing their hair, they would get blisters on their skin, and they would get sick and vomit and die. So very similar to radiation sickness, and that's very curious. But the Ark, from what I understand, it contained what are known as Leyden jars, which are like Baghdad batteries, or in other words, another version of giant capacitors.
That's amazing, isn't it? It's also amazing that some of the most successful people are the most open-minded, and they're prepared to believe and investigate this stuff and actually recognize high technology when they see it.
This guy, Sir Charles Siemens, he climbed to the top of the Great Pyramid when he raised, here's the story. Now, this is anecdotal. There's no proof of this, but here's the story. When he raised his arms with his fingers spread out, that an acute ringing noise was heard on the summit of the pyramid. And then raising just his single index finger, that he felt a prickly kind of energy. This is while he was at the very top, or at the summit of the pyramid itself. When he tried to drink from a wine bottle, he got a slight shock. Now, remember, wine is very acidic. Wine, like vinegar, is what was used by the Egyptians, and you can still do this today if you have a little multimeter. You can buy it for $5 or go down to Harbor Freight. You can have a multimeter for $5 or $6. Cheap little things. And it'll, if for those who don't know what a multimeter is, it's a little tiny device with little electronic or electrode prongs, and it'll tell you the voltage or the amperage of an electrical circuit. So that's a multimeter. I have done this myself as just a backyard experiment because I love my red wine. I've got lots of it around here. So red wine being very acidic, you take 2 different metals, one being copper and say a piece of iron, like a nail, like a 10-penny nail that you would use in construction. One is a cathode, one as an anode. And you basically just dip them each in 2 different glasses of wine and then attach the 2 wires to your little multimeter, and you will absolutely get a charge. Typically, it's about 5 volts. And from what I understand of electrolysis, what's happening is the iron rod, which in this case would be a nail or a 10-penny nail or a piece of iron of any kind, the acid etches away the molecules of the iron, and during that process, electricity is released because the molecules of iron are being separated from their solid. I don't really know the best way to describe this, except one atom at a time is being eroded away. It's the process of erosion which causes an electrical charge, a current. So we know that there were Baghdad batteries. We know that they had electricity in antiquity. And pardon me, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Ankara? The inscriptions on the wall with what looked like light bulbs on the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Is it Ankara?
Not sure what that one's called.
You know the hieroglyph I'm talking about, the 2 giant look like flowery bulbs, lotus bulbs, and there's even what looks like an insulator underneath, and we can look that up too. We can screen share. And by the way, Charles, if you have anything you want to screen share, just feel free to just jump on it and I'll shut up, give you the floor if you want to screen share and talk about anything.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, I mean, and didn't Siemens also, he tested that wine jar capacitor in the king's chamber, and he noticed that it was charging up.
The story I understand is that he moistened a newspaper. Okay, and anybody can look this up as well. He moistened a newspaper. He wrapped it around the bottle, making basically a Leyden jar, which is like a Baghdad battery. He held it over his head. Again, remember, he's standing at the summit of the Great Pyramid. He held it over his head, and it's said it became increasingly charged. So I don't know how they would know that. Again, that's all anecdotal, but you can look that up and read what they have to say about it. All very interesting. But nevertheless, this character, Sir Charles William Siemens, who again was the world's first electronics billionaire, he founded his corporation, his company, based on his personal experiences and experiments that he did while at the Great Pyramid, as it is stated in the history.
That's amazing. I might just try screen share. Oh, sorry, Bart.
Yeah, well, I was able to find the Dendera light, as it's referred to, is in the Hathor Temple at the Dendera Temple Complex in Egypt. And I'm just looking at the first thing that comes up, which is the Wikipedia
It's
entry.
Dendera. Yeah, I think it is Dendera.
No, that, well.
Yes, it is
It is.
Dendera.
and the entry here is interesting because it has the mainstream view and what is called the fringe view. The fringe hypothesis is that they depict ancient Egyptian electrical technology, while the view of Egyptologists is that it is the sculptures become notable among French historians. Mainstream Egyptologists take the view that it is a typical set of symbolic images from Egyptian mythology. So, you know, nothing to see with it. It's just typical. It's nothing to it.
Here's the picture.
There it is. Yeah, and that's clearly an insulator. Bart, why don't you highlight Charles?
I've done so. Yes.
Since Bart, you're hosting, so you got to do it. Highlight Charles so he stays on the screen.
Yeah, I've done that.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Oh, he's not staying. He's not staying for me.
Well, no, you got to click his square when you're in the Hangout.
Okay. Well, it should stay for. Go ahead.
I mean, if you look at this, it's quite interesting. And notice also the filament is a snake. And a snake lashes out, it hisses, it behaves like electricity in a way. It's also a wave. And I think even if the ancient Egyptians by this stage didn't possess light bulb technology or ancient technology, this is almost like a memory of that technology, which has become slightly mixed up with mythology. And down here you have this figure, this god. It's on a pylon, but it's got the sun disk, so it's showing, you know, this is light, and so it's showing the sun is sort of almost holding up this or blessing this. So there's the light right there, you see, and yeah, I mean, von Däniken talks about this as being some kind of because it almost looks like an antique telegraph or electricity pole from the olden days.
That's an insulator, and that's very common. We see those on high tension power lines, devices that look almost identical to that as a form of insulation in an insulator.
It's interesting because we don't know what the Earth looked like, say, a few thousand years ago. There might have been a lot of the older high-tech infrastructure still surviving in different places, you know, where there were no people. After all the catastrophes, there might have been these pylons still standing up, and people made drawings of them. They didn't know what they were. They looked in their own ancient texts, and their own ancient texts sounded a bit like science fiction, which they didn't appreciate, and it all became religion. I have a feeling that's what this is, because it's not scientific enough to be science, and yet it's got all the hints of science, doesn't it? I mean, it's it's amazing. And they have made it like kind of like a flower, but it also looks like an Art Deco kind of lamp.
You know, it's funny that you said Art Deco, because that's exactly what I interpret this image to be, as an Art Deco of the time. Exactly.
In fact, the funny thing is the whole Old Kingdom aesthetic was Art Deco, and even the fashion. I mean, if you look at I think Rahotep, a son of Khufu, and he's even got the Art Deco sort of moustache happening, like you get in the old movies, you know, and their clothes look Art Deco. It's amazing. I'll try and find that, but I'll try and find it. Yep.
I do believe that the Art Deco movement of the early 20th century was very much inspired by a fascination in a revival in Egyptian motifs themselves, right? So it's difficult to say which thing influenced which, right? So you see what I'm saying? So a lot of archaeology became more mainstream. Also, media itself became more mainstream. There were more newspapers, more magazines, We had more books printed, more communication, more fascination with things, and then with the Industrial Revolution came more leisure time and more study time. Therefore, more time to make art and things like that. So from that emerged the Art Deco movement itself, and it was very much influenced by a lot of the archaeology that was coming out of Egypt at the time, and the Middle East and Arabia. So
true.
Yeah.
Check this out briefly. It's Khufu's daughter, and look at the chair. It's they had crazy furniture before. It's like the legs of some extinct Egyptian beast or something. And anyway, that as well. Anyway, back to light bulb.
Charles, is it safe for me to assume that you have seen the images and or video of light beams coming out of the tops of various pyramids throughout the world on various days of the year?
I have seen those, and I don't know what to make of them. And I'm guessing that I'm guessing they're totally authentic. There's a famous picture of a double helix sort of electrical spiral coming out of a model pyramid that dates from the 70s. And I'm guessing these are totally real. I'll tell you why. The name of the pyramid is Akut Khufu, and they translate this as Horizon of Khufu. But if you look up the Wallace Budge dictionary, Aku is actually spirit. And if you see a picture of an Aku, it's actually that, you know, that disc with wings that keeps popping up in mythology?
Ahura
really
Mazda.
Sorry?
The disc of wings is Ahura Mazda, the disc with wings, the wing disc.
Exactly. It's that. That is what I believe is an Aku, which is basically an orb, which people photograph and physicists are unwilling to investigate. They don't want to risk their careers. They stick to the conventional stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you look around the world, Aku is the word for spirit among the Sami people. Aku is the word for spirit among the Easter Islanders. I think the ancient sea travelers carried this around and they gave it to the Egyptians. The people who are perhaps responsible for those huge stone walls, which I think are much older, maybe much older, and they all had this word Aku. So, an Aku is kind of like if it was higher energy, it would be like a ball lightning. So is the pyramid therefore generating a kind of ball lightning energy? Aku Khufu, it's right there in the name. Is it a spirit generator? And in fact, this is what the Egyptians were trying to do. If someone died, they wanted their spirit to come back. So, I mean, again, we're stuck between technology and mythology here. So it's a fine line. I mean, I think the Egyptians are totally remembering when they did everything they did, they were trying to somehow bring back or resurrect the ancient technology, the far older technology. And so we keep seeing hints of this, which perplex us. And we wouldn't be perplexed if it was pure mythology, would we? There are so many hints of high technology here.
Without a doubt. When it comes to the winged disc, I would suggest, and this is my opinion based on what I've seen through my studies, I would suggest that the winged disc is a representation of Saturn, which is said to be, according to some, Saturn is said to be our original sun. So when you look at Saturn through a telescope, it is in fact a winged disc.
Do you think it could be?
Yep.
Go on.
I was just agreeing.
Actually, Saturn looks kind of, to me, because I made a video about shrinking Earth, whether or not that's true, but Saturn kind of looks like either the relic of an explosion or a kind of implosion. And the method of planetary formation, it's similar to galactic formation because it's flattened out like a disk, the same as galaxies. The debris around Saturn It's icy, apparently. Is it the relic of an ocean? We know there are a couple ocean planets around Jupiter. Is it the relic of an ocean moon that's exploded? I mean, it's Saturn's weird. So I reckon that the rings around Saturn prove that Saturn has changed dramatically. That's the proof right there, the rings. Because you don't get that around other planets.
I believe Uranus has a small, it's either Uranus or Neptune has a similar but much smaller ring.
Yeah.
We're told.
Uranus or Uranus. I prefer to pronounce it Uranus so it doesn't sound like my anus.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just a pronunciation. I prefer Uranus. It does have a set of rings of its own they're very difficult to see, but it does have its own rings. Now, when it comes to Saturn and its relationship to Egypt, the tie-in for me would be, and for those of us who have followed the show, you'll know what I mean when I say Smurfs. And for those who don't know, they're Jews because they're bluish. Get it? Everybody get the joke? It's the new way around. It's the new way around the algorithm. We call them Smurfs. We don't call them Jews. They're bluish people, right? Rhymes with bluish. So anyway, the Jews were a prominent society among Egypt. And I'll tell you a very quick anecdote. Very recently, a good friend of mine on YouTube uploaded a video, and he's very, very anti-flat Earth. He was making fun of the people in the flat Earth community who are making money, selling shirts and whatever, making money, and now there's a flat Earth convention going around, etc. He made a video highlighting how these people are all about their money, etc. And he used the audio from Fiddler on the Roof, the song "If I Were a Rich Man." Na, 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 na. So I'm a musician, and I recognize that not only is that a really good song, it really is a good song. It's a catchy tune, and musically, it's very well put together. It's a very well written piece of music, actually. So the last couple of days, I've had that song stuck in my head. So I've been studying that song because I'm a musician, and I'm into music theory, and I'm into how songs are put together, and how sometimes you can start a song with a chorus, for instance. You know, you rather than start it with a typical intro and then go to the chorus and then have a verse and then have a bridge. This particular song starts with a chorus, which is a little different than most songs. And so I've been not only had this song stuck in my head, but I've been studying its construction musically, the song "If I Were a Rich Man." And it occurred to me a couple days ago that the scale that is being used, or the mode, if you're a musician, you understand modes. And we'll talk about that, Charles, because I've got some screen captures and screen shares that I want to discuss with you that involve musical scales, musical notes, and architecture and how they relate. But the mode or scale that's being used for this particular song, "If I Were a Rich Man," I noticed, it occurred to me that it's very Egyptian sounding. It's not only sounds like a very Jewish song, okay? It's obviously Jewish. The whole movie, Fiddler on the Roof, it's about a poor Jewish family in Russia. So there's no question that it's about Jews and Jewish tradition and culture. And the song is obviously a very Jewish song, and they're using a scale that the Jews typically use for most or all of their music. But what occurred to me was, it sounds remarkably Egyptian. It sounds like the kind of song, if you were watching like an old 1950s or 60s movie about Egypt, you know, Ben-Hur or some shit like that, that this would be the kind of musical scale that they would use. So to me, bells were ringing in my head. I'm going, oh my God, the Jewish scale is the same thing that we would describe today as being Egyptian. Do you know what I mean? So to me, there was a big tie-in between the Jews and the Egyptians. So on that note, I'll move forward with my hypothesis. The Jews today have been known in certain circles, especially those of us in the quote unquote research or truth community. They have this little black square that they wear on their foreheads. The men do during certain ceremonial days, and also one on their bicep, on their arm. It's a little black cube. And the black cube is recognized among all of us in the truth community as being the cube of Saturn. So, going back to Saturn, again, the winged disc, and Jews in Egypt with this concept of the winged disc, Ahura Mazda, that this is a Jewish thing, that they worship Saturn to this very day. They continue to wear and that also goes to the Muslims. By the way, all the Abrahamic religions, they're all Saturnian. Okay, this is all Saturnian worship, because the Muslims, they go around the Kaaba stone, that big black thing, and they all circle around it like the disc, right? Like the rings of Saturn, and they all wear their white robes, just like the white icy bodies that surround Saturn and as the disc of Saturn.
Saturn is Uranus, as you say, as you pronounce it, and he is that he is the primordial god, and
also Kronos. Saturn is also Kronos.
You're right. Saturn is Kronos, time, and would Uranus be the father? So Uranus is the universe.
I think Uranus is the father of Kronos, as I recall. But I could be very wrong.
I know I've talked a lot, but let me jump back in. Uranus or Uranus, when you pronounce it Uranus, reminded me of Oannes. Okay.
Oannes, yes.
Oannes, okay. Oannes is God. It's El. Oannes is the Milky Way galaxy. Oannes is the serpent eating its own tail. Oannes is the old, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Greek. I think it's the Greek name for the Milky Way galaxy. It's known as the Earth Encircler.
That's similar to Germanic mythology with that snake which encircles the earth, biting its own tail, and it lies under the ocean, apparently like some ancient transatlantic cable or transoceanic cable.
The Ouroboros
technology.
It's known as the Ouroboros, and sometimes it's seen as a figure-8 figure. Sometimes it's seen as a dragon. In ancient Hebrew, Oannes, or the Ouroboros, is also known as Leviathan in ancient Hebrew, and it's a fish eating its own tail.
Interesting.
So there's a certain time of year, every year, when the Milky Way galaxy, which is the path, the stripe of stars that go across the sky, when it settles and becomes horizontal, it goes all the way around the horizon. That's why it's known as the Earth Encircler. And I can do a screen share as well. You can look for images of the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy is, in fact, the serpent biting its own tail. And the center of our Milky Way galaxy is right in the mouth of the Ouroboros, which, by the way, and I hate to keep being the guy rambling on, but the serpent eating its own tail, the center of our galaxy, is right in the mouth. On 2012, on December 21st, 2012, 12 news to end of one cycle, the beginning of another. That's when the sun set on this winter solstice on December 21st, right in the mouth of the Ouroboros, which is a perfect alignment with the dead center of the supposed black hole in the middle of our Milky Way galaxy. That's when that clock was reset. And that's the 25,920 year cycle of the equinox.
It's quite interesting. Hey, check this out. Sun, moon, and something else.
That's an 8-pointed star. I would suggest that that is Sirius, the dog star.
When Sirius was red?
Perhaps. There's a hell of a lot of symbolism and reference to Sirius, not only in myth, astrotheology, and for anyone who caught our show a couple of, well, Amy, was a month and a half ago, we had Influence Freedom, who...
It was just a couple or 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so 3 weeks, maybe a month ago, we had Influence Freedom, who showed that Hollywood uses astrotheology to imbue the various actors in all the characters and throughout all the characters and all the movies that they play. Like Keanu Reeves, for instance, this is the one we talked about mostly. He is represented as Sirius, the dog star, and then Bart very astutely pointed out that Keanu Reeves, he has a band, a musical band. They're called the Dog Star. And Influence Freedom pointed out how all of the symbology embedded within the movies of all of the movies that Keanu Reeves has played in, all are symbolically linked to Sirius.
And I want to add a fun synchronicity here. I think just in the last couple of days, John Laban, who was our guest last week, put out a video about some of his analysis around the Truman Show. And if you remember the Truman Show, it starts with Truman leaving his house, and the light falls from the sky, and it's Sirius. It's marked as Sirius. And then he actually does a nice job breaking it down scene by scene, where when he bends over to pick, to examine it more closely, this is happening at 3 minutes 33 seconds, and then a little bit later on, he goes to a and of course he mentions that Sirius was known as the Dog Star, and then later on at the newsstand, at least half of the magazines on the rack were dog fancy. Right, so yeah, it's a thing. It's definitely, the encoding is clear once you learn to categorize things to look for, and then once you see them, you can't unsee them, and then you start seeing them everywhere. So
I want to jump back in real quick. I want to give a shout out to a YouTube channel known as 88 Finis Temporis, and 88 is the Roman numeral. I've got it here. I can screen share, or I don't want to interrupt Charles. He's in the process of screen share. I don't want to interrupt that.
I'll go for it. It's all right.
The Roman numeral is LXXXVIII Finis Temporis. So if you just type the Roman numerals for 88 and then Finis Temporis, he has done many, many, many videos and series of videos. Reeves representative of the Dog Star, but so is Michael Douglas. And Finis Temporis just last week put out it was a 45-minute video showing numerous movies that Michael Douglas has starred in, and he has highlighted all of the aspects, the occulted, hidden aspects in the movie that allude to the fact that he is also representing Sirius the Dog Star. So it's not just Keanu Reeves, but my point I'm trying to make is that Sirius the Dog Star seems to be in a really, really important and significant celestial focal point of the quote-unquote Illuminati or the powers that be or whoever's running this place.
The psychopaths in control.
Well, and this, but doesn't it belong to all of us, really? And isn't some of this an idea of us doing our own research and wrestling the knowledge away from those who would want to keep it for themselves? But then again, I think there's been researchers that have made some good points, which is, gosh, they're really hammering it home by putting it into everything. So in a sense, they're using it, but they're putting it out there. So if you have eyes to see, you'll see it.
That's right.
Something like that. Can I interject and say,
yeah, please.
With regards to plasma cosmology, you know, they talk about Birkeland currents going across the universe. They talk about an electric sun. So the stars of the universe are always changing in intensity based on the electric currents.
Yes.
Driving through the universe. So that could explain why Sirius used to be red. In every ancient account, it's red, except for a couple where it is blue. And either that's because there was some volcano going off on Earth or catastrophe, or because it really was red. But here's the thing. Because Sirius is so intense, it is the brightest, I think it is the brightest of the stars.
Yes.
It must be a source of one of these currents, electric currents, which is driving towards our sun and powering our sun as well. And in addition, if you look at some of the work of David Icke, some of which I believe in as well, some of the recent work, he talks about us living inside a conscious bubble driven by the consciousness of things like Saturn and the sun. And I sort of thought of this before he started talking about it, because the thing is, if the sun is a huge ball lightning, a huge orb, and many UFOs are also, if they are ball lightnings, and they can induce different consciousness effects on people just by their proximity. As soon as someone gets close to a UFO, has an encounter of the third kind, and they lose consciousness, and they remember something that hasn't happened or may not have happened, it's as if they've entered a new reality. So the idea is we're perpetually in a new reality, possibly in a different reality to the actual reality, and it's driven by electric currents coming from Sirius or coming from any bright, intense object. I suppose there are other intense objects maybe in the infrared that we don't know about. And I think this could be one of the reasons that Sirius is playing on our subconscious. I'm still so intrigued about what this third planet is. It actually, to be honest, it looks round. It's rounded. Maybe it's the Earth. Maybe it's the round Earth. And so I'm just it's so hard, because to understand this, we have to be an expert on the subconscious, the Jung, the archetypes, the electric universe, the orbs. But I think if we appreciate them all, it all slowly starts to come together and we can piece it all together. But it's an enormous jigsaw puzzle. And there's so many people out there who are never going to appreciate this, because they're just all in one field. Even someone like Stephen Hawking, I hate to say, he was just all in one field. And his death was a terrible tragedy. But
if you believe he lived that long.
Well, yeah. It was amazing that he lived so. It was just a tremendous act of willpower, I suppose, or something. He defied all the doctors.
Well, also it depends on how you define amazing.
Yeah.
Charles, I'm looking at this image that you have on the screen, and what should be the sun, all the way to the right, has not quite a hole, but there's a circle carved in the center. And that kind of reminds me of, like, if you take a modern digital camera and point it right at the sun, that you'll get a black spot right in the center.
Oh.
And for those people who are fans of Richie from Boston, who likes to put out bullshit like saying things like that we have a sun simulator, and here's proof because there's a black spot and they're having and I don't want to get into that, but the fact is, it's an anomaly. It's a digital anomaly with digital cameras that when you point it at an extreme light source like the sun, that's too much light for the aperture or the iris of the camera, and it automatically kills some of that by creating a black spot in the center of the sun. I just think it's very curious, this carving that you have on the screen right now, that if that is the sun, why would they go to the trouble to create this little circle in the center? That's, to me, is kind of curious.
It is amazing, isn't it? And it's almost, I have to say, it's almost like a double sun, to be honest.
Hasn't the isn't that a classic archetypal symbol for the sun? Is a circle with a dot inside of it? I think that's
the alchemy symbol.
Yeah, that's a classic symbol for sun. So I don't think it's all that exotic.
Well, most of the sun symbols that I've seen depicted in ancient iconography do not have the circle within a circle. It's typically just a disc. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've missed it all these times, but I've not noticed up until this point on this particular image that what should be representative of the sun has this little extra circle in the middle. That to me is a little weird. Maybe that's the all-seeing eye. I really don't know how to interpret that.
Yeah. Well, I think often the sun and the all-seeing eye are cross-referenced or correlated. The big eye in the sky, right? The eye in the sky. Maker of fools.
Sure. And then there are scriptural texts where Jesus is supposed to have said, if thine eye be single.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Clearly, that's the moon in the middle. The one on the left, like I said, I think that's Sirius because it's an 8-pointed star without the additional 4 diagonal points. It looks like your typical symbol for Sirius, which is a 4-pointed star.
You're absolutely right. It wouldn't have these points on it if it wasn't for the atmospheric distortion making it twinkle.
Mm-hmm.
These also could be diffraction spikes, like from a telescope. You know, a Newtonian telescope has the four things holding up the secondary mirror. That's why each star has 4 points for one of those photographs. Maybe it's a telescopic view, but yeah. But anyway, if you don't mind looking at this, the air symbol seems to be very similar to the all-seeing eye, and the symbol with the dot in the middle was indeed the sun. There's so many different ancient archetypes here in the alchemy symbols. They've survived. I think they all must be Egyptian. And they all must have dated from that period.
It's funny how most of those symbols appear to be modern versions of electrical circuitry.
Indeed. Well, these ones look like sigils, which is amazing. That was in a book. I forget the author. The Giza Death Star. And
that's
he said,
Chris Dunn.
No, not the Giza power plant.
Oh, the Giza Death Star. Sorry, that's Joseph Farrell.
Joseph Farrell. And he actually pointed out in that book, I haven't read the sequels, but he pointed out that these are ancient electronics.
Yes.
These sigils. And he's got a point.
Absolutely.
He's got a point, because these are ancient scientific symbols.
Some of them we use today.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, these were probably not arbitrarily. All symbols have an origin. They're never an alphabet. I think is rarely invented. They all come from something.
Right.
For example,
it's not just
our
an
alphabet is the
imaginary
current.
thing.
Sorry.
No, it's not just an imaginary thing. They don't just say, "Hey, let's make it this" for what arbitrary reasons.
Well, exactly. I mean, one is a grid. One looks like a tuning fork. One looks like some kind of plumb weight. One looks like an anchor. These are all.
Oh,
these
the one that you said is
instruments
the
or
one that
something.
you said looks like a plumb weight. That's actually the current modern technical diagram or pictogram for a oh crap, it just left my brain. It's not a capacitor, it's a I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, it just left my brain. There's a modern electronic
Resistor?
oh crap.
Dielectric?
I'll think of it in a second. Oh, it's a what are the new lights? The new
Mercury?
the
Plasma?
the LED, the
Light emitting diode?
that's
Diode?
a diode. That is a diode right there. That is a diode.
Wow.
Well,
That's incredible.
wouldn't it make sense? Well, symbols work like this, right? That they are the simplest form that carries a larger concept. So, yeah, and I think that it's useful to think about it going backwards and forwards in time, right? Not to get stuck on, well, if it looks like this today, it must have been lifted from long ago. As well, I think it's silly to think, well, it's arbitrary. It was arbitrarily assigned recently, therefore has no connection to anything anybody ever could have meant long ago, right? So it's about what's the middle ground between those two. Those two things represent the false dichotomy, right? It couldn't be this because it doesn't work that way, and it couldn't be this because it doesn't work that way, or it does work that way.
Okay, the symbol that is 1, 2, 3, the fourth row from the left, and the second row up from the bottom. Charles, if you would circle your mouse to be sure that we're all talking about the same one. Yes, sir. That's the one right there. That one right there, the way the little arc, it jumps across the line. It's like a line, and then it kind of arcs, and then it jumps over the vertical line, and it goes back to horizontal. Again, that is another representation of a modern electrical diagram. That is how you describe how a current or electrical conduit would cross and not make contact with another.
Yeah, and guess what else? White substances are insulators. And you know, white substances are insulators, black substances are conductors, because the black substance absorbs all the energy, all the electrons. It doesn't reflect anything back. So here we have arsenic white. So it's even in the name that it's a kind of insulator. Is that what you were driving at?
Well, no, I just recognize the symbol. I can barely even read the letters.
Okay, sorry.
I'm not wearing my reading glasses, so for me it's hard to read.
Yeah, I think that's a really good connection, Charles.
That's also true with light, because black surfaces absorb light from the sun. They get very hot. White surfaces reflect light. So that again is another correlation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think all these symbols are just in the universe. These are the archetypes, and we just keep reflecting them over and over throughout history, and that's why they're so similar. And back then, I guess they used them for alchemy. I reckon these symbols are super ancient because they might not. It sounds like chalk, so it's like a chi, so it's like a Greek thing here with the chalk. But I mean, most of these I reckon are super ancient, and because they are from Egypt, where alchemy was born, and the alchemy was, I mean, if they had geopolymer, that's more advanced in terms of stonework than what we have today, and that I think that was the alchemy. So this really is ancient science. I think it really is.
I have to agree. There's also the element of as above, so below. I'm looking at the two symbols on the right column. Second from the right, there's arsenic and then autumn. Is that autumn? Is that what it says?
Antimony.
The two symbols on the second from the right, middle column, middle way down, there's arsenic and then autumn.
Aqua vitae, arsenic.
The one below it.
Autumn, yeah. Okay,
those two symbols, if I'm not mistaken, are remarkably similar to the symbols of Saturn and what's the other?
Jupiter.
Jupiter, thank you. I'm just got so much stuff in my head right now.
Well, you're right, and in fact, this is a Egyptian hieroglyph. This is an arm holding basically an ankh, holding life. It's like giver of life. I mean, you know, could be from hieroglyphics.
And just very to the right of where your mouse cursor is bismuth.
Yes. The
symbol of the number 8, or the symbol of infinity, which is also the known as the analemum. The analemum. That which is the pattern that the sun makes in the sky. If you track the sun through its solar cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The analema.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the analema?
I am.
No.
Okay. The analema is a figure 8 pattern that not only the moon makes in its lunar cycle, but the sun makes through its yearly cycle. It makes a figure 8 pattern. If you track it every day throughout its entire cycle, it makes a figure 8 pattern in the sky. You may see a figure 8 drawing on like an old world map. You'll see a strange figure 8 pattern in the sky, and that's called the analema.
Charles, what is the search that you did in Google to get this? Because I'm realizing it's alphabetical, and the image up is A through D. So I was looking to
alchemy symbols.
Alchemy symbols. Okay, great, thank you.
Which translates as the Blacklands symbols, the Egyptian symbols.
Mm-hmm. Alchemet, yes.
Yeah.
Alchemet. Oh, Kemet. That's
nice.
That's Egyptian. The Kemet, the school. Wow.
The Kemet means the black land, yes.
And check this out. Amalgamation.
Amalgamation.
Yes.
Yes.
But look at this. Light
looks
bulb.
like or a bit like the Jed pillar. In fact, that is the closest symbol to that engraving, that bas relief over at the Endia.
This is the Dendra light bulb.
Yeah.
The two arms holding it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the jet pillar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if anything, I think what we're really talking about is, when the Egyptologists who, let's say, whoever's in charge of sanctioning the stories and the narratives about Egypt and Egyptology, they don't go past certain things. They won't go in and study something like alchemy, right? So when they're, or maybe some of them do, but I would say the majority of them don't. They'll take a more sort of surface reading of things, and that's fine. I mean, there's plenty there's plenty of content just on the surface to keep anybody or any group busy for several lifetimes. But when we start, going a little bit looser in interpretations, okay, yeah, we can spin off and reach some, some ridiculous conclusions. But when it comes to something like this, right, where that engraving, that bas-relief engraving on that temple is clearly similar to that, and therefore, can that symbol on that wall be read as amalgamation? And when it is read as amalgamation, what could the other things mean, right? Maybe if there's a translation of all of that entire image that's on that wall, what if we used this, these alchemical sets to base this as the decoding, and let's see what we would come up with then.
I think you're a genius. That's a very good idea, because a lot of these are to me, they're clearly hieroglyphs. It's just they're the picture. They're the picture form of the Egyptian writing, simplified down. They're not the hieratic that the later Egyptians used. These are just simplified pictures. And
I think a lot of the confusion stems from our own biases as to language usage and alphabetic usage, right? So when, if all you know is Roman letters, right? And all you know is Indo-Arabic numerals, and you try to, you say, that's human, that's how people think, this is the logical conclusion of human thought and endeavor, is when you wind up with, English and maths, right? And then you try to shoehorn everything into that, or only look at the world through that filter. And you sort of, forget about pictographic and hieroglyphic writing. And even I think a lot of the more enlightened, brighter scholars will tell you, no, you got to kind of, take that for what it is. Take the Roman alphabet, take it for what it is.
Got to cross-pollinate disciplines.
Yeah. Syncretism. Keep expanding your vocabulary, and you'll find that stuff lines up in unexpected ways. And then translation becomes a little bit more easier, or a little easier. And I think you end up in less places where you go, nah, couldn't be. You end up in more places where it's like, yeah, that not only could it be, I think that's actually the right answer. All right, back to you guys.
Well, I was just noticing, as a side topic, the middle row, starting from left to right, it starts with aqua, which we all recognize as water. And it is even the symbol of water. It's the wavy water pattern. And then the following 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you move to the right, it's aqua fortis, aquariga, if I'm reading that correct without my glasses. And then aqua
regia.
And then aqua vital.
Oh my God, you're right.
And then aqua vital again, or aqua vitae.
Vitae.
So these are all representations of water, which, again, as above, so below. The human body, there's a correlation, and we're going to get into this in a minute, because the correlations are astounding. The as above, so below, between the relationship between the human body, the earth, the sun, the moon, the proportions, they're astounding. So we're talking about energy, the human experience, the human body, the spiritual realm, the energy fields, and there's this whole row of aqua-based vernacular going on with all these alchemical symbols, and it just jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see? So Aqua Regia is, I think that's the universal solvent. That's a couple acids joined together and it dissolves. I think that's what it is. It's called King's water because it dissolves the gold or something. I don't know why. But this one here, Aqua Vitae. So water of life, water.
Yeah,
And
vital.
That's
where we get the word vital or vitalize. Yes.
Yeah, but it's the Egyptian symbol of life as well. It's got that little. It's got the cross and it's got the circle on top, but it's just been modified a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So these really are from hieroglyphs.
Yeah,
it's just they've been slightly changed.
Well, what it is it has an inherent internal logic unto itself, whereas the Roman alphabet, it's sort of been detached from its inherent logic, right? When you look at the letter A, you go, okay, well that I don't know why that makes the sound, but if you trace it back through its Indo-Arabic roots, back down into Sanskrit and maybe even deeper, you see what the symbol mutated from, and then I think the places where you land, it's like, well, that actually makes sense why that symbol would be sounded out as or that symbol would make a p sound. It starts to make more sense.
It does, and all the A. This is proof that they're actually letters. They're hieroglyphs. All the A's have like a V shape, like our letter A, especially this one here. And you look at the other ones which don't have an A, and you don't see that. So it is a kind of alphabet. It's hieroglyphs. Yeah.
Oh, I'm about to embark on. Gosh, I think I tweeted this out the other day. I said, I think my life would be a lot easier if I only had one obsession. I just keep finding more and more stuff to be interested and obsessed with.
I know the feeling, Bart. I know the feeling.
Man.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I'm among friends.
I would say so.
Yeah.
You want to look at some other stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
Awesome. Okay, so I just did a quick search for Inca Egypt. And this is getting back to the Ark stuff. We know things like, say, the Osiris. Okay, this is from Hidden Inca Tours. So, stuff like the Osirion in Egypt. All this stuff is made out of big, huge blocks. Made in the same. Oh my God! Is that they've even. See, it's hard to tell if it's a modern restoration or not, but it's even got a sort of join there and there, and all this stuff is made out of huge blocks. So, if this is for storing something dangerous, you would make it out of huge blocks in case that thing basically explodes. So I'm just. See, I really wonder if that's what the pyramid was for. If it was designed to contain an ark, if that ark was nuclear, then you would build something like the pyramid. But I guess then you would ask, why didn't they just throw the Ark of the Covenant down a well or something, put it underground? And I think it was too sacred for that. I think if it was some lost technology or something like that, they wanted to contain it. They thought it might explode. Stick it in the pyramid, basically. What do you guys think?
You know what this is reminding me of is I've done a little bit of research into these quantum computers where the idea that I don't know if I'm going to say this as precisely as I'd like to, but it's the idea of whatever the element, like the processor that's going to be running, it has to be so super cooled and so the surrounding area has to be super cooled and super vacuum pumped out. So there's nothing affecting it in order for it to work and be safe and be stable. So I've often thought of the Giza pyramid as a giant electrical circuit, right? Because if you, or microprocessor. Right, it's just done on a huge scale. Because if you think of microprocessors, what are they made out of? Sand What are the pyramids made out of? Sand, silicon.
Let me just interrupt you for a second, Bart. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer, and I took several years of electronics courses. One of the things involving supercomputers, when it comes to being supercooled, there are two qualities that need to be in order. Number one is a processor has a extremely high amount of electricity running through it in order for it to function. And then we have these devices that we call heat sinks, which are basically, it's an aluminum bar that is specifically designed to do nothing other than extract heat so that the processor doesn't cook itself, because it's doing so much work. And so when it comes to being super cooled, that's one factor, because they're running a shitload of electricity through a very fine circuitry, and it'll short circuit, it'll blow itself out, or it'll burn itself out. Okay? So that's one quality.
That's interesting, because the pyramid was either designed itself to last forever, or to maintain something inside it that it was protecting forever, so that no catastrophe, nothing could hurt whatever was inside it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Maintains forever. Same temperature, pressure, everything.
I think you're really onto something, or at least the connections between, okay, let's say it was a super sophisticated machine of some sort, right? The Giza power plant model, right? Maybe that's the thing that fed a certain kind of electricity or energy out into the surrounding area, and that's what made all of Egypt flourish. And then it was hunky-dory for a long time there. It was a great place to live. But maybe, and then I think maybe there's some people that started to be some jerks, and then they got exiled, and then they were outside of Egypt, right? They were expelled from Egypt. Then they got together and amassed an army.
Well, we know that,
right? And came back in and had a successful conquering of Egypt, where they took the ark from the pyramid and said, we want this thing. We're going to steal this thing and go set it up somewhere else.
But they
because we know what we're doing. Huh?
But then maybe they didn't understand the technology.
They didn't understand it, and then it's been a shit show ever since.
Well, we know that rocks are piezoelectric. We know that granite and crystalline rock are conductive. We know that they absorb energy, they emit energy. I think that the pyramids, rather than a containment unit, rather than being afraid of an explosion, I think the pyramid was specifically designed to extract energy from the earth or the ether, and then perhaps charge or replenish the charge in some device, perhaps the Ark of the Covenant.
I think it's all true. I think the entire thing, every step and every element relied on every other element for the whole thing to work. But and the Ark itself was like the core processor, right? But you take away any one of them, the thing doesn't work anymore, right? Now the thing that's left over, which is the pyramid, right? Which is the thing you couldn't take away because it's so damn big and heavy, right? So you take away the thing that you can take away. Yeah, I mean, you can have an old desktop computer, like an old IBM or something, right? And if you could remove one little thing from it, and then it's a giant desk weight, right?
Well,
Right.
like I was saying very early on in the show, that the ancient scriptures refer to the Hebrew priests who had to wear ankle. Hold that image right there, Charles. And if you can, maybe expand that out a little bit. I want to look very detailed. I want to look closely, because like I was saying earlier, that the scriptures said that the priests had to wear these anklet bracelet things on their ankles that basically grounded them to prevent them from being shocked from this device. So I just wanted to look at this artwork to see if there was anything on any of these guys' ankle that might indicate that. I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't look like it to me.
Okay. All right. So
now they are carrying it by wooden rods, which are non-conductive. So that makes at least a little bit of sense.
Right, right. But you got to consider that this isn't like a photo from the time.
No, I understand.
I mean, I'm sort of being a smartass here, but this is an artist's representation of the story. So
yeah, but artists of that time doing this quality of artwork, they didn't just willy-nilly draw and paint on their own. These artworks were commissioned.
Oh, that's the bit. Oh, you know what? I would debate that. They didn't come up with stuff willy-nilly. Come on, I think it's back in the day. I think you give him too much credit. I think you give him too much credit.
Hey, Bart, you're an artist as well as I am, and you know that in ancient times, when you have to go out and find your own rocks and grind them up so that you have the red and the blue and the yellow and the right colors, and you had to pay a whole lot of money for various minerals that created the perfect blues and the perfect colors. This was a huge endeavor for these artists back then. Typically, these religious artworks that we're looking at were commissioned. This is not willy-nilly stuff.
Well, okay, all right. Depends on what you think. What part of it we're talking about is willy-nilly.
Well, they didn't just paint because they were bored. You know what I mean? They didn't just paint like we do today, because you can go down to the store for a few dollars, get all the colors you need, and paint whatever you want. That's just not how it worked back then.
No, it's we have a misunderstanding. We're talking at cross. What's the term? Anyway, I was going to say, let's not make this the Bart and Aaron have a conversation. Let's get Charles back in here.
By the way, if Fomenko is correct with his new chronology, maybe it's eyewitness sketch.
I'm big into the Fomenko material, so if you ever want to, if you want to start in on that, I'm game. I don't know how familiar Aaron or Amy are with it, but I'm not.
I'm reasonably familiar.
Okay, I could go on for days on that. But I won't.
So go ahead, Charles.
In a good way. I'm taking it seriously.
Go ahead, Charles. What are we looking at here? Obviously, the arc.
Wasn't there supposed to be an electrical spark going between these angels' wings? I suppose arcing across, because these are like these are pointy. These are like lightning rods here. Don't know if it's depicted correctly.
I don't know. I'm thinking if it was an Egyptian thing, the angels wouldn't look like that, right? Wouldn't they look more like Egyptian style falcons?
Like the one on Tut's tomb.
That's kind of what I mean by willy-nilly, right? Meaning like this is a Renaissance painting, right? Maybe mid, late Renaissance. So we're talking 1500s. If we're talking about events that were happening, you know, if the carrying away of the ark, let's say, according to standard Egyptian chronology, you know, that's happening, what, 1000, 2000 BC? I don't know. I don't know when they say that the ark was removed. I mean, I don't even think that they're saying that the ark was in the standard interpretation is not that the ark was in the pyramid and it was removed. Although I think that that's a really good bet that that's what that story is referring to, right?
Oh, exactly. Anyway. And even if the ark wasn't in the pyramid, there might have been a story that the ark should have been in the pyramid from earlier times in order to contain its tremendous power, and they just built a massive replica. I just noticed this. It's from Tut's tomb, Anubis ark. And it's actually the boat ark with a box ark. So is this how the confusion of the two words occurred? Because ark is really, ark is really boat, and it for carrying. It's like a it's like a cargo ship, right? And I think it's a Phoenician word because even in Portuguese, they had boats in the Renaissance. They call them barks, you know, and that's basically the same word. So they may have inherited the old Phoenician sea traditions, and I find that one interesting. But the classic one is that's so tiny. The classic one is this one, I suppose. And if you look, I suppose that's the angel's wings right there. Or they could have been a bull's horns. Or they could have been something like this. Could have been the angel, and that's its arm. That's the wings of the angel.
Yeah.
So, but of course, this. I think they were making a replica because isn't Tut's time about the time that Moses was supposed to have lived? So they would have been making arcs for all occasions, but I suppose none of them were the original one. The original one, if it was in the pyramid, it would have been even way older than Moses, way older.
Also, who was Moses, right? I've always found it a little odd that there's an Egyptian pharaoh named Tutmosis, and then there's, the guy who founded Judaism is named Moses, yet no correlation there.
Yeah.
You guys are not related. I think that sometimes we're talking about the same person. Sometimes we're talking about two completely different people. Sometimes the word, what's that thing from Dragnet? The names and places may have been changed to protect the innocent.
Yeah, I don't think Moses ever lived.
Well, he did. If he was Tutmosis, right? Where are the mistakes happening? Where are the assumptions and the mistakes and the purposeful misdirections happening?
Well, if Tutmosis was Moses, that's a whole different story.
That's what I'm saying.
The Moses of the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, never lived.
Right.
But that's a whole other show. That's a whole other show.
That's a complex question.
Well, clearly we have the bull represented. We have Anubis, the dog, which may represent Sirius, the dog star.
It could be the Sphinx itself. That's something I've been looking into lately.
I think that's highly interesting that you have images of Anubis associated with the Ark. And by the way, Ark not only refers to an electrical arc, but arc also refers to an arch, as in the Royal Arch of Freemasonry. Arc also refers to a crossing between here and there. Maybe that's why they had the boat.
Yeah, the big boat.
In that other image, because a boat is a transportation device, takes you from here to there. An arc takes you from here to there, like a rainbow.
And isn't the arc also the Milky Way arcing across the sky? Right? And every animal is in the ark, right? All the animals.
Oh, good one, Bart. Good one. That's correct.
And a boat arcs across the ocean.
Yeah.
And the sun arcs across the sky. The sun makes an arch. It's an arch. It's an arc. It goes from one side to the other in an arch shape. And yes, all the animals are in the ark. Wow, good one, Bart.
Yeah. Thank you.
See, we keep Bart around for a reason.
Yeah. For me, this is what I was talking about. It becomes obvious once you learn the decoding method and the language, and it all starts falling together, and it starts making sense. All this stuff that I understand the atheist perspective, right? Of going, and I think I was there. I think we go through these phases, right? Because I remember being there where I was going, none of this religious stuff makes any sense to me. None of these stories, they're all claptrap, right? Because they were presented as this literal thing. Nobody told me these are allegory. These are astrotheology. When I started researching and looking into it, I'm like, now it makes sense.
I did that too. Too.
Now I'm back. I'm back in. I'll never take it literally, right? Again, but I think the allegorical stuff is way more interesting.
Oh yeah.
But the whole idea that they got people to take this stuff literally, man, that's the psyop.
So what do you think, Charles? What do you think, Charles? Why is Anubis sitting on what looks like the ark? What do you think?
I don't know.
Sorry, Charles. Last thing, and I'll throw it back to you. Aaron, why do you say that that's an ark?
Well, it just seems to be I'm just suggesting it's a representation of the ark.
Well, but why?
Size, shape. That's all. That's the only reason. Size and shape.
Okay.
It's so similar to the ark. As for why Anubis is on top, he's a skeletal Anubis. So he really is like a desert dog, a desert jackal. It doesn't get much to eat, so they want him to be hungry. He's also on top of what looks like a mastaba because it's got the same angle as the mastabas. So I'm guessing there's one of these underneath the Sphinx, and in fact that's kind of what the diagram shows of on the dream stele. There's a huge structure underneath the Sphinx. It's got an anchia, so there's life. Quite a few ankhs.
Can you expand that picture a little bit bigger?
So we'll see. And it also looked to me, let's see if I can. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
so
zoom in. There you go. There you go.
I was wondering if these are some more jet pillars. There we go, jet pillars. Perfect. So it's got jet pillars and life. So it's more of this electrical stuff, you see? On the ark, on this particular ark, if it is an ark, and then you've got their artistic style. I don't know what more to make of it. As for Anubis, one of the gods of the underworld.
Isn't the Ankh a tool of healing? Or it's like the energy of life or something like that?
Yeah, it's the energy of life emerging from the sun. So I guess in this context, it's kind of afterlife stuff to continue on living in the afterlife. So that means that if this was carried around, like the Ark of the Covenant was carried around, it was done probably for religious reason, for part of a resurrection ritual. They carry it around. Maybe they carry it around the tomb, or maybe they carry it between. Maybe it's like the Olympic torch. Maybe they carried it between his former palace to the tomb, or maybe they opened the tomb, because Egyptians, I think once a year, they would actually go into the family tomb, and they'd have a meal. They'd have a meal with the ancestors. So maybe they open the tomb, carry the ark out. Maybe the spirit of the dead is in here, but I'm just guessing. But these are kind of things the Egyptians did, and you see the eternal life themes here. This ark is kind of distant from the biblical ark, isn't it? It's kind of, it is from Moses' supposed time, if there was a Moses. So this is the kind of ark they would have. Also, I'm wondering, did you notice the bull's horns were also in the tomb? And didn't the Jews make a golden calf while they were fleeing? So did they make, essentially, did they make that? Did they make a kind of Hathor type figure? Was that plonked on an earlier type of ark? Did Moses then get very angry and say, no, you're going to worship my God, which was the monotheist God, which might have been the bull, Saturn, or it might have been the sun? I've got a lot of questions here. What do you guys think?
If I'm not mistaken, Moses is a representation of the constellation Aries. That's why the Jews to this very day continue to blow the ram's horn on various days, on religious days. So Moses, as far as I'm concerned, is Aries.
And Aries follows. Taurus, the bull, follows Aries, right?
See, I think it's the other way around. I think it's the other way around. That's why Moses came down out of the mountain and told. And because he found his followers, they were worshiping the golden calf, which is a representation of the bull or the Taurus. Yeah. And it was time out with the old, in with the new.
Right. in the zodiac, as it goes yearly, Aries, then Taurus. But in the precession, it goes Taurus, then Aries, right? So which one are we talking about? If what we're talking about is the cusp of the dawning of the new eon or the new age, according to the precession, then we're talking about Taurus overtaking Aries, not vice versa, right? So that would be Moses destroying the golden calf.
Yeah, I think I follow. I think I follow what you're saying. But Moses, as far as I'm concerned, like you were saying, it's the new age, it's the new era.
Yeah, it would be the age of Taurus, right? Then
it's out with Taurus and in with Aries.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, exactly. All right.
So that's what Moses is represented. That's why Moses saw his people worshiping the golden calf.
Exactly.
And then, told his people to kill each other and burn the calf or, destroy the golden calf, right? Out with the old, in with the new. That's the allegory. That's the parable there.
And then 2,000 years later, the next thing is the fish, Jesus,
is Pisces,
coming with the new law to overtake the old law. Because the old law was,
Yep. And you and I have lived through the crossing of the age between Pisces and Aquarius.
Yeah, I think we're in it right now. I think it's, it's not a...
We're in that transition period as we speak.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
And that's why things is wonky.
Mm-hmm. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So
Charles, I was just going to say, Charles, got anything further to add?
He typed that he said he would be right back in the side chat on the Hangout.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
All right. So apparently Charles had to take a quick break, so we can continue on with our current. Should be any second. Okay, he's back. Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead. Go ahead, Amy. He's back.
I just asked if Charles had any further thoughts on this, but I guess he had stepped away. Necessarily know precisely where we were in the conversation.
Well, I think it's all it's also hard to define, so hard to define because we don't know the time period. For example, if we look at, say, some of those Inca rocks like these, that's another pyramid right there on top of a hill. This is in Cuzco, right? And if these are geopolymer, could they have been cooked by a catastrophe into a harder stone? Because these are granite, but the Egyptians built the same way. But when the Egyptians built like this, look, pre-Egyptians, they only used granite on the Assyrian and on the Menkaure pyramid. Otherwise, they just used limestone. So the Egyptian stones not cooked by the catastrophe. So if there was an intervening catastrophe, how long ago was this? I think these are tens of thousands of years old. And if so, these definitely go with the Ark of the Covenant story. So do the pyramids. Maybe stones of the pyramids are tens of thousands of years old. So are all the arcs we're looking at, see, to me, the Tut Ark, the ark from the so-called time of Moses, is nothing to. It looks like the biblical ark, sort of, except for the fact it's got an animal on it. But it's just totally different. It's so different, and it doesn't have a function. It doesn't work like the one in the Bible does. I think the one in the Bible is possibly way older. And because of that, we don't have a time period. It's so hard. I mean, when did the ancient nuclear explosions happen that are in the Mahabharata? I think that was the same time period as when this was built. But when was it? It could be a huge time period ago. So those are my thoughts. It's so hard to define. But this is undoubtedly the same technology that you find in pre-Egypt in all those huge stones, the Osiris. You see little joints like this, and it's I think it's remarkable. This, by the way, I think that the stones like this, very close-fitting stones, contribute to the structural integrity of the whole thing. So that's why they put them on the pyramids as well, on the Menkaure pyramid. They help it stay together, I think. And because you see this in Gothic cathedrals, if there are some Gothic cathedrals on the inside, it's tiled all the way up, or it's bricks all the way up, and the bricks or the tiles help hold the structure together. So I don't know. I'm saying a lot of different things, but I'm saying
I think you're right, Charles. I think that technique increases stability, and it looks to me to be more aligned with how nature would do it than the way that we do, let's say, brickwork, where everything is even. I've seen some like demolitions of brickwork, or some what happens to brick when it during an earthquake or something, and because it's so sort of artificially symmetrical, it's like that's its failure in its design, because everything, if one thing shifts, it all shifts, right? Because the lines of shifting are so neat and tidy, but that's also its weakness, right? Whereas this, if they're
the polygonal structure tends to be a lot more stable.
Yeah,
it's the most stable out of any structure, because they're surely by far the oldest buildings in the world, and they're underneath so many European castles. All those European castles were never built from scratch. They were just built on older castles.
right,
And many of them are in earthquake zones and have survived.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're built on foundations like this that aren't going to move too much, and they aren't going to develop any crevices or anything. This thing here, these are supposedly homes of the Inca royalty in Cuzco. But obviously, as people like Brian Forster point out, it's a different construction to what the Inca used, because the Inca could only hope to imitate this or to rebuild, such as up here. Mm-hmm. And they rebuilt stuff that had been quarried or destroyed long before.
Yeah. And I think this is also what the Romans did, on top of what now it's called before the Romans showed up, it was the Etruscans, right? But I think the Etruscans, whoever that was, were the ones that had this technology, this technique. Then the Romans came in, not when they claim to have come in. They came in way later, and then they basically just retroactively claimed ancient Rome for themselves. We've been around here forever, but really they were the new kids in town. But then they fabricated their own ancient history. But they were really just building on top of, so literally standing on the shoulders of giants. And that, we could split that off into a couple different.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've watched some of your videos, and I've been in and out of that topic too. And I think by the way, I wanted to say this, Charles. I love your enthusiasm in your videos. You get me excited. You are always smiling and happy and excited to be researching and doing what you do. And I think you're doing what you love, and I love what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Bart. Well, that's the reason I do it, because I love it.
and it comes through.
No other reason. Have to, just have to do what you like. And
I have to echo Bart's sentiment, Charles. This is why we love you, because you are a breath of fresh air in this field. You are the kind of guy that we need. We, meaning the world, we need people to think outside of the paradigm, outside of the box. You're a free thinker. You're not bound by any dogmas of current philosophies or current academic standards, and you're just such a free mind.
Thanks, Aaron.
To watch your videos and the way you explore things.
I echo those sentiments back to you guys. You guys are awesome too.
Well, thank you. Listen, do you mind if I take the screen for a few minutes?
Go for it.
And by the way, these images of Cusco and Egypt has also used the same polygonal. We say polygonal in the West. This type of structure is also used in Egypt. The more that I look at these stone walls and structures, the more that I'm convinced that this is in fact geopolymer. They did not carve these to fit together. They were soft. They were like clay. They had a way of creating a geopolymer, and they would pack it in, and that's why the fits are so tight. And that's why we have the various tool marks. Now, that's not to say that certain stone work was not carved and cut, because we have quarries where very clearly there are quarries. Wall structures like this to me screams of geopolymer.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
When you guys say geopolymer, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. What are we talking about? Are we talking about sophisticated? Well, I'll just let you answer.
It's cement, Bart. It's like making cement out of granite.
Or
it's like taking granite, for instance, in this case,
yeah.
Whether it was granite or basalt, grinding it into a powder, and then with adding a binding mixture, a binding agent, and reforming it and letting it reharden back into its original state. And this has been done in modern times. This has been proven. This is a proven science. This is a real thing. That you can take virtually any kind of stone. I don't care what it is. If it's the hardest stone on earth, granite, basalt, I don't care. Just go look and research. You can find people doing it to this day, that you can take any stone, grind it into a powder, add an aggregate.
That makes more sense to me than the
pieces and chunks. Just like today's in modern cement or concrete mix, they add aggregate, which today we use granite chunks. And then you can use very simple tools like little trowels and just pack it and push it and mold it like clay.
Got it.
And then it hardens back into its original state.
Totally. I am on. I'm hip then. That's what I thought we were talking about. I just hadn't. Again, geopolymer is the term.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew the concept, just didn't know the term.
It's like making concrete out of granite.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Pure granite concrete. So when it hardens, it's as hard back, looks just like a piece of granite, like an original piece of granite. So
isn't the issue of the difficulty of doing these megalithic type structures, right? Isn't the a bit of the misdirection around that the idea that they had to be quarried, therefore they had to be transported, and that made it so difficult, and that's why they're so impressive. But if you consider this geopolymer technique,
right,
well, then really nothing to quarry, nothing to move across vast distances.
That's right. They didn't. In some cases, they didn't move 100-ton stones. In some cases, it was bucket after bucket after bucket after bucket, made these enormous, weird-shaped, just like the image that we see on the screen.
Well, that just solves a whole bunch of mysteries, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Okay.
However,
I'm going to go have a cigarette in celebration of solving this mystery.
However, we do have another mystery. We do have the protrusions that still have not been solved.
I'm gonna highlight you, Aaron, so that you are free to screen share, and I'm gonna pop out for a smoke. I'll be back.
Okay, so Charles, before we went broadcast, we were talking about my icon, and let me see if I can find it without making you guys suffer too long. It's vacation videos, and here are those, and those. I think it's this one, or maybe it's this one right here. Yep.
Hey guys.
Okay, so here I am at Newspaper Rock, and I wanted to share this with you, Charles.
Wow.
So this is the famous or the infamous Newspaper Rock. It's in Moab, Utah. And as you can see down here at the very bottom, which looks kind of like the alchemical symbols, one of the alchemical symbols that you were showing earlier is one of these down here. We have several symbols like this one here and this one right here, where we have the circle with the cross. There are multiple spirals, circles within circles. We have these creepy, weird looking characters that have bullhorn or crescent moon type heads. This one in particular looks like it has a tail, a long tail. So you just go ahead and soak this up for a minute. I'll move forward as you like. Here we have a circle within a circle plus the cross inside the circle.
That's the Earth alchemy symbol.
For some reason, Aaron, your mouse on my screen is not pointing to what you're talking about. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, okay. That might be a delay.
Could be.
Over here on the very left side, we have the symbols of water, the bull. This looks familiar, and I haven't put my finger on this one yet. And it's almost to me, it's almost a science fiction. This is where my mind or my memory wants to go to remind me of what this thing looks like.
Looks, if we're talking about the same thing, it looks to me like some kind of bug. Are we talking about the same thing?
I think so.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of bug, or, you know.
Now, if you see my mouse right now, this thing right here is a really curious image that I have yet to figure out in any way, shape, or form. If you see my mouse, still on near the left side, right behind the bull on the left side of the screen, is this long image that is, to me, just beyond strange. It doesn't resemble anything that I can even think of.
To me, that looks like a person. It's sort of got the dress hanging down. It looks something like the images on the Bradshaw art. Have you heard of the Bradshaw art?
No.
It's from the Pilbara region of Australia, and it's very arid and it's African looking. And the Aborigines here say that they don't know what those are, and some other people must have done them. And they're carbon dated to about 30,000 years old plus. And that reminds me of that particular art. The other stuff, some of the other stuff, such as that thing there where your mouse is with that sort of animal skin with a claw instead of a head. Yeah, that thing. That reminds me kind of also what the Aborigines around Ayers Rock used to do. I saw a few pictures of crocodiles laid out like that. That's really interesting.
You know, just barely to the left of that image is this thing where my mouse is, where you have a dot, a dot, a dot, and then down here it looks like a Y-shaped, almost like a pair of legs with two dots. They're connected with a line. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little dots, almost like a halo right there around this image.
That looks exactly like Bradshaw art, except it's more, it's not as elaborate. They had sort of stick figures joined by dots as well. So I guess these people were traveling around a bit, whoever they were. Also the wheels, that's an Indo-European thing, except for because there's a wheel with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spokes, which is, I suppose, some old sun wheel.
That's this one over here. That's my icon. There's a
Yeah.
6-spoked wheel over here.
I think that's an Indo-European symbol. Also, but the other things are the alchemy symbol of the earth, which is that hot cross bun symbol. And that one up there, it looks like it has an atmosphere as well, which is quite interesting.
This one here, I never noticed it until I'm talking to you right now, but this one right here that I'm circling with my mouse, and also this little tiny thing right here, also very curious. This one, the circle with the dot, has these lumps on top and little lumps on the bottom. Very curious looking symbol right there. It could be a Saturn. It could be the wing disc representation. I have no idea. I think they could have done a better job if that's what they were after. Very curious. We have this symbol right here that looks kind of like an alchemy symbol that you showed earlier. Similar something. Very curious. This guy right here and this guy right here, to me, I would say those are those are easy ones right there. Like this guy right there. Looks like a flying squirrel.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we have these footprints like this right here that I'm circling. Here's one, here's two, here's another one. And as I stood there and took this film and photo, I counted, and some of these have 5 toes and some of them have 6 toes.
Very interesting.
And then we also have, I'll play this forward. I'll get a better look here as I'll zoom in with my camera on some of these images. Okay, I'm going to pause here. This is a curious symbol right here. It almost looks like a double sun. We have 2 shining objects that have rays coming off. Both of them are not only close together, but look like there's a conjunction or a collision.
That's very interesting, because the only reason for, I suppose, making these carvings in the first place is either this could have been what in Australia, if this was an Australian Aboriginal cave, and I have to say,
no, this is outside. This is open air. There's no cave.
I wonder if there was a. Well, it's very interesting because they are so similar to what you see in Australia, yet a bit different, because the Australian stuff's done with a kind of ochre paint, and these are obviously carved. But the only reason you would want to record this is if this was a teaching cave. So it's for teaching the kids about the history of their civilization, teaching mythology, because it's all in one place. So it's like a classroom. But you'd also want to record stuff because, like, it's like taking a photo. So if some strange natural event occurs, they would want to record it for all time, stick it in the teaching cave, and pass it down to subsequent generations. So if there was some kind of double sun phenomena, whether that's just a visual phenomena with fog, or whether it's like the false suns, or whether it was something more Velikovskian.
Saturn in the sun.
Or whether it's Saturn in the sun, whether it's Saturn in a different form, they would have wanted to recorded that for sure and passed it on and said, look, this event happened. By the way, this event happened a certain number of generations ago. We want to record it for all time to let you know, just to pass it down so that it won't be lost from human memory.
Right.
And then it became lost to human memory, more or less.
Exactly.
Since we don't.
Yeah, not much we can do about that. But even those big, those devil-like spirits that you see there, the Australian Aborigines had something similar to that. So they had 2 types of ancestral spirits. One was a very long stick figure man, and one was a kind of fat man who's similar to that thing with that guy with the horns. So there's something quite interesting going. I see so many similarities. Even the paw prints. The Australian Aborigines, they do diagrams of paw prints across their pictures as well. quite interesting. Spirals too, they do spirals. Snakes, they do snakes. I like the bison, that's pretty cool.
1, 2, 3.
What are
4,
those small
5.
animals, like deers or something?
Deer, antelope.
Hmm.
You've got a ram here with the ram's horns. These look like your typical antelope or deer that we would see in the American Midwest. This image here where I'm circling, this is the one that I find really kind of curious. I can't, unless this is some weird Saturn depiction, like the winged disc that we talked
Okay,
about.
I've got another spin on that. You know how Galileo, for a primitive telescope, used to draw Jupiter, and he used to either draw it as a kind of Saturn or with sort of ring split in. Like even Galileo with the primitive telescope, he drew Saturn as like that, just like that, with a disc, and then kind of four blobs, 2 on each side, with his very primitive refractor. So.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite similar to that.
Should also be known as graffiti rock.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's modern graffiti. 1954, somebody felt the need to chisel away their fucking name.
Someone who's very selfish.
Look at that. 1902, 1954, somebody decided to scratch their initials. How, tragic.
Well, maybe they're just signing their work.
Oh, wow.
Now, you had mentioned the Aborigines. If I'm not mistaken, this image right in the center here, that's very similar to what we see in Aborigine cave drawings. Is that right?
I think it is. They had a kind of horned figure as well, just like a walking blob, a really a fat type man. And so this one here, he's holding a shield, or he's holding a spear chucker, or the Aborigines also had narrow shields. They just carved a shield out of the bark from a tree, so it was quite narrow, elongated, a bit like that. Could be a shield.
I find this particular image striking for a couple of reasons. Number one, whoever was chiseling away and chipping away and making these images, they didn't have any problem. Look at the detail in the ram's horn right here. The horns are very specific. They're close together. Somebody had a little bit of skill when they made these depictions, right? They had antlers on these deer up here, and they all have these spindly little legs that are close together, and they're all very accurate depictions. And then when you come to this guy, where did it go? This guy. This is a very sharp lines. Look, if they wanted to depict a human being, they would not make this. This is curious. This is not the depiction of a human being. Somebody who had the ability to make those little ram's horns and the little detailed legs, why would they go to the trouble to make this? And by the way, this is not half-assed stuff. Look at how sharp the lines are. Points right there, the shoulder points, they're very accurate, very straight lines.
I've got a theory.
Go ahead, Brett, lay it on me.
The Etruscan warriors had helmets with horns, like bull's horns. And the Etruscans also, in Roman times, when they were dominating Rome, they were just a land empire, because they had been forced into just being a land empire by the Carthaginians, the Greeks, who took over the seas. But before that, they were a naval empire competing with the Phoenicians, and they controlled the Western Mediterranean. So they would have been sailing to America, and they would have dominated the orichalcum trade. And the reason the orichalcum, I think that was zinc, putting zinc in stuff from the Great Lakes. And they were basically forgotten because the Romans were a new people who arrived in Italy from they might have been, I think the Romans were Hittites. The Hittites were very property oriented, very very feudal, pro-slavery, and that they took over. And could it be an Etruscan warrior? I'm not sure, but if it's similar to that one there, then obviously not. That one there is a kind of spirit. So what that one there is, in German mythology, there is the wild hunt, the CONHWC, and CONHWC is he's the master of the wild hunt, and there's a story that if you go out in the forest on his day, he'll catch up to you and take you down to hell. So that is a kind of CONHWC Yeti type figure. It's almost as if and it would be a shared mythology, because the Native Americans coming over from Russia in very ancient times, they would have had the same figures. So that's a kind of CONHWC figure for me.
Now, when you say CONHWC, to me, I understand Cernunnos, a Cernunnos. So are we just phonetically pronouncing differently
yes.
Same.
Same.
I pronounce it Cernunnos, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure how it's pronounced. I'm just going the
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah. Just going the Roman way. They didn't have the S sound for the C, so.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear, because there's a language. You're in Australia, and I'm in East America. I'm in Georgia, so there's a pronunciation potential. So I just want to make sure. So as I look at these footprints here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. There's a pair of feet with 5 toes. Somewhere, and I'll show it to you. It's in here somewhere. They got 6 toes. And I wonder if they would have got that wrong by accident, or if that was intentional.
Maybe they're not feet.
Some of them have 4 toes.
Yeah. So either they're a mistake, or the genetics have changed, which they did change, because they were. See, if these are, say, tens of thousands of years old, as the ones in Australia are, which are dated to that age, over 10,000 years, and even the modern Aborigines don't know how to interpret them. They say they've got no clue. Then it kind of follows. This was an Ice Age world. It was a little bit different. There were different animals. There was megafauna. And all that megafauna is gone. It's been hunted to extinction, or it's been destroyed in the last catastrophe. So, see, I find it hard to believe that these people would put 6 toes on a 5-toed beast if this was a kind of teaching. I think it's a teaching cave. So why would they do that? They're not. I don't think these are stupid people. These are,
Right.
These are just Stone Age people trying to get by. Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. I think there might have been 6-toed creatures.
This one here has 6. This one here has 4. This one has 4. So, like you said, I mean, they could be mistakes. We have to chalk it up as a potential. Oh, and by the way, does that look like a $sign right there?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Interesting. I never noticed that one. Oh, and look at how perfect this guy is right there. That's a very accurate depiction of a man. So I wonder if they were capable of doing this type of detailed work, why would they screw up these other aspects of these other depictions? And of course, it may not be all the same artist, so there's no real explanation. We can only speculate.
Oh, this would have been done over thousands of generations, and it would have been added to so many times, quite altogether. They were just looking for free space.
I could see this being done over the course of a week. This is not that much. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here.
This is where I paused my video and I actually said to my wife, I said, this is going to be my new avatar. And it is.
Am I muted?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, Bart. Was I talking over you?
I was just saying, I'm just trying to be careful about wild speculation, right? Like for instance, what if these things that look like footprints, what if they meant something else? Okay, just because they look like footprints, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they could be, right? What if it's kind of like that idea of like, you know, that I was talking about earlier, which is like the idea of the symbol for the letter P, like, does it really look like the sound P? You know? So yes, these do look a lot like footprints, and I will give, you know, I don't want to be that guy that's like, you know, no, they're not footprints. No, of course they very well, most probably are, but maybe they mean something else.
Here's a set of 4 footprints that very clearly are in fact footprints or images of footprints. Now, this one down here has 5, and yet all 3 of these other ones have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and again 6. And look, they went to all the trouble. Look at this long, this would be the pinky toe. They went to all the trouble to add that.
A bit like 6 spokes on the wheel.
Yeah, but look at
6 toes, 6 toes.
Yeah, but look at the one. Okay, so there's the
5, and then 3 of them have 6.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that was a mistake.
Well, some of them have 4. I see a couple that have 4. I'm not saying it's a mistake. I'm saying it could mean something else.
Sure. Here's one right here, down here. See my mouse? Here's one with 4. Yeah. And then right above it, all these others have 5. This one has 5.
Mm-hmm.
This right here,
could be
I would suggest.
System. It could be a number system similar to the way the Maya do it, right? It's a dot, 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 and in order to represent 5, they would draw a line. So 6 would be a line and then a dot. 7 would be a line and 2 dots, right? So this could actually be a number system that is based, and often number systems are based on the body.
I doubt it. I doubt it's a number system, and I'll tell you why. Because the placement doesn't look like they're trying to count anything so much as represent something. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Why would you have a whole bunch of 5-toed, 5-dotted things just kind of put on there, almost looking like footsteps?
Right. I would sort of turn the question around as like, why would you engrave footprints at all?
Well, that's a good question.
That is a good question. Why would you carve so many footprints when you're trying to have a teaching wall? How many footprints do you need?
It's kind of like maybe you need 1, and then it's like that's what a footprint looks like.
That's a good point, Bart. That's a good point.
Maybe they every time they killed an animal, that was a scorecard.
Yeah.
Or it's a representation of the Milky Way or something. Because if it's a teaching cave, you might want to have a calendar. You might want to have a number system. You might want to show the phases of the moon, the sun, and then you'd also teach the kids or whomever with stories. So there might have been a story about some 6-toed giant stomping across the land, killing everyone, and they were trying to represent that in a way. But it's just the problem is there's too much detail there. It's hard to say.
I find there's 2 images here. This one right here that I'm circling is a remarkably detailed, very well drawn circle, concentric circles, very accurate, very artistic, very good rendition of whatever they were depicting. Concentric circle inside of a thicker circle inside of another circle with spikes. That one I find very interesting. But right above where I'm circling right now, look at this. What do we have here? We have the peace symbol, or some would say the cross of St. Peter, which he was supposedly crucified upside down. This is an upside down crucifix with the bent arms, otherwise known as the current modern day peace symbol. Very curious symbol right here.
Maybe the hippies did that. Maybe the guy who signed off in the 50s did that. Or
Go.
Okay, one more
How
thing
would
I
we
want
know?
to one more thing I want to show you in particular, and then I'll move on. As we come, there it is, right there. All right, we got a couple of things to look at. We've got this beaker looking crazy alien thing right here. Who the hell knows what that is? We can speculate for months on that one. But this guy right here, what do you think that is?
It's not a dinosaur.
It looks like a dinosaur to me, but maybe it's pareidolia, or however you say it.
I think it's a dinosaur.
That would be my estimate.
Because, I mean, you know, many people have said that this is probably a turtle. But, okay, number one, whoever is doing the artwork here is pretty good at depicting accurately. Look at the detail. There's a guy here riding something with horns. Look at the detail. They got the ears or the horns. That's very detailed. It's fairly accurate. Look at the horns on the stag or the deer. Pretty detailed, pretty accurate. And then you have this thing. If that's a turtle, look at this tail. Doesn't that look like the club tail of, I don't know the name of the dinosaur, but isn't there a kind of dinosaur that has a sort of a club for a tail?
Yeah. I don't remember the name of it either.
You know, turtles don't typically have long, straight legs, and they don't typically have long necks like this guy does.
True.
Well,
So-
I would say, let's be careful assuming that it's an animal of any kind. It could represent, well, it could be representing a building. It could be representing a building, right?
think-
A mound,
How about-
with
how about-
paths.
How about this image right here? Is this a rodeo? The guy's standing on the back of some animal. Are they having a rodeo?
Yeah, it looks like it. And he's balancing a child up in the air.
Look, I'm gonna phrase it
Bartomon
this way.
Bailey
I'll-
going on
I'll
right
phrase
here.
Hey, look, I'm going to phrase it this way, and then I'm going to back off. Which is when I'm looking at this, the last word that comes to mind is detail. Okay,
Yeah, that's true.
the last word.
Although that strange thing has 4 dots across the top of it, that's some pretty interesting detail.
No, maybe no. I'm going to frame it harshly. If this is detail, if these are detailed drawings, I feel like that is the rape of the word detail.
Fair enough.
All right, you got me, Bart. You got me.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's that. Charles, I have been gathering all week long an entire file of things that I want to show you.
Cool.
Let me see. Where's the best place to start? I think what I'll do is I'll start with, let's see. Oh God, it's almost 10 o'clock. Okay. I think the best place I want to start. I don't know if you got my comment on your video. Where did it go? Right here. You posted a video not long ago. I assume you recognize this image.
Yes.
You went to Ireland, is that right? Is this a museum in Ireland?
This is the main national museum in Dublin.
Okay.
And yeah, they had so much stuff there.
Okay. You classified these in your video. You didn't know what they were. You said they looked like grenades. I think I figured out what they are. And it was after I watched your video. Here's what I think they are. Where did this picture go? I captured. Darn it, where did it go? Crap, where did it go? Which one? Which one? I think it's this one. Maybe no. Darn it! I thought I put it in this folder. Maybe it's this one. Let me just check. No, no, no. Hang on. I'm so sorry to keep you. Where did it go? Anyway, I think they're plumb bobs. There they are. Here we go.
Plumb Bob SquarePants.
Look at the. Look at that.
Oh.
Can you see this image on the bottom right corner here? This is an Egyptian stone mason tools. Look at that guy right there.
Yeah, so the wood has rotted away and just the metal remains.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, look at this right here. You see my mouse directly above that image?
Yep.
And then again right here.
Yep. There's lots of them.
So I'm suggesting that those images in your video that you were not sure of, I think these guys might very well be plumb bobs. What do you think?
They could well be. I think a lot of these things are from royal tombs, even dolmens. These particular ones are Celtic era, Iron Age, about maybe 300 BC. Other stuff they found even under dolmens. They found lots of gold from the Stone Age. You could well be right. There's definitely something for tying. Yeah, there's something designed to tie them up with. Yeah, who knows?
So let me put them side by side. Let me zoom in on this one a little. Oops, no, go back. Let me try to zoom in a little bit. What do you think of that?
I'd say
Maybe.
there's a
Definitely
high
similarity.
probability. Right.
Are they pointy enough to be plumb bobs?
I don't know. If you look at the image, like for instance, these two images up above, this one I'm circling here, not very pointy. This one here, not exactly pointy.
I see. Yeah.
Maybe.
It's hard to imagine what else
only,
they'd be.
you know, I'm only. I'm just saying, maybe. You know.
Could be.
I watched your video and then I stumbled across this literally within the same day or the next day, and I was like, "Holy shit! I just saw this." And so I went back and said, maybe, you know, maybe. Because, I mean, what other explanation? They have a ring where you would probably attach. Each one of these has a ring. And if you attach a string, and then the ring and the string allows for all the free movement. And look here, in your, this is a screen capture from your video. Some of these actually do have fairly pointy tips on them.
They do. Yeah, you're right.
Like this one right there is kind of pointy. This one here is kind of pointy. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I give that a high probability.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah,
Me too.
What else would they be used for? They don't look like something you'd wear. They don't look like a musical instrument. They don't look like jewelry.
I'll tell you what they look like. There's an image in Rome, and I've been to Rome and I've seen the statue, and I forget the name of the supposed goddess, but she has what are said to be either breasts or bull testicles. Are you familiar with the image I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Ah, crap. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. There's not a lot of time for me to go search for it.
Is it like a set of like 30 boobs all around?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And you think, wait, and some of the explanations are she's wearing like a vestment of bull balls?
Yes, that's one of the speculations. It's either a bunch of breasts, it's a bunch of 20 or 30 breasts, or a potential, like you said, a vestment of bull testicles, which would again represent fertility.
Right.
So that's the only other explanation I could come up with for the shape of these things.
Although those are fossilized bull testicles?
Fossilized. I wouldn't say, no, I wouldn't go there.
They fossilized into metal? I'd like, maybe. Anything's possible.
Okay, so let me see. Charles, you did a video where you went and you visited a Freemasonic temple. This is not a screenshot from your video. This is a screenshot from SGD channel. Very good channel. Does some very good,
Excellent channel.
Very good work. Let me see if I can expand this out a little bit. This is a statue from. Let me see. This is the let's see. This is Ghent, Belgium. Let me see if I can span this out a little bit. This is strength. This is a Freemasonic statue that represents. It says Butte, Force, and Sagis, which represents strength, beauty, and wisdom. And
yes,
Sagis, or Sagesse, right here, or Sagesse or Sagis, which I interpret to mean etymologically very close to the word sage. In fact, if you just drop the SSE, you have sage, which is another word for wisdom, a sage. Okay, so we have strength, beauty, and wisdom represented in this statue here in Ghent, Belgium. And he equated it to these images here. If I can expand out a little bit more. I'm sorry, it's going to be pixelated terribly. It represents the three pillars of Freemasonic order: the Doric, the Ionic, and the Corinthian, which are represented by the three images below. And you see there's a W, S, and a B, which is strength, beauty, and wisdom, down here on this image, bottom left. Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. And as I was reviewing this, as a musician myself, I recognized Doric and Ionic because, as I was stating earlier, there are musical scales known as modes. And here's a quick screen capture of just a Wikipedia list of the 7 modes, which is Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Lucrian. So here in the Freemasonic temple are the 3 pillars: the strength, beauty, and wisdom. The Doric and the Ionic relate directly to the Ionian, which I also interpret to mean potentially, and I'll put this to you for thoughts. Ionian or Ionic, to me, screams Io, the moon Io.
Could be. There's a lot of that going on in Greece. For example, Athens is Athens, possibly an Akhenaten colony fleeing Egypt after he was tossed out or killed or died, went to Greece. Ionia, it does sound like Io's country to me. And there is, of course, they're regions. They're all regions of Greece. So I guess in that case, Corinth could be the corn, the horned one, Saturn, and
Very
not sure.
good.
So the Doric is the wisdom. I wonder what region that is. In Greece. Oh, that's right. The Dorians came in from the north. So the Dorians were the ones replacing the ones who called themselves the Achaeans in the Iliad, or they might have been the Mycenaeans. So I guess that was their style. And their god, they would have just been more waves of Indo-Europeans. Their gods would have just been the Indo-European deities, possibly not Saturn. So I don't know. It's because there must be something like that going on here, because they chose it for a reason. They're Freemasons. There's a deeper meaning. Don't know what it is.
I am noticing that the bottom scale here, Locrian, reminds me phonetically or etymologically of the god Loki.
Yes.
Also, the LOC, phonetically and etymologically, the vowels are interchangeable. So LOC could very well easily translate to LUC, which is Luke or Lucy or Lucifer.
Lucrative.
Lucre,
Yes?
that's money. Yep.
Oh, yes.
Now, what do you think of, just off the top of your head, Charles, what do you think of this word Phrygian? What does that mean to you?
The Phrygians were, I think, a colony of Celts living in central Turkey. They were either mercenaries of the Hittite Empire, which was so long ago that we don't know the details about them, or they were just invaders who had settled down, and they were sort of coexisting or being a part of the Hittite Empire.
Fantastic. Anything else?
Of course, the Phrygian cap. They had a funny pointy cap, and well, it's interesting, because I mean, why Phrygian? I mean, they're not really Greeks anyway.
Yeah, but what is a Greek? No, seriously, I think what you can't sum up people, or you can't even sum up one person with one word. Never mind 10,000, 10 million, 100 million people over the span of thousands of years with one word. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody for using the word. We have to use words in order to point to stuff. I'm just saying, like the idea of, is it a real Greek or not a real Greek? This is it could send you down quite the labyrinth.
Okay, so while I got you on the phone, Charles, what else rings out or sticks out to you with the other names like Lydian, Mixolydian, or Aeolian? Anything you can add to those?
Lydia
Because
is also part of Turkey, obviously. Also, Ionia is also part of just the western bit of Turkey. The Mixolydian, that sounds like the Mixotec people of America. I never heard that one before. It's quite interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's seven of them. That's a lucky number.
It's the music. These are musical scales. These are what are known as modes. These are different versions of particular scales known as modes. So if you're a musician, you understand mode.
Yeah.
It's a different way of playing scales. It's like Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. He's famous for saying, "It's not the notes you play; it's the notes you don't play."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Nothing else in particular.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to see what I could pick your brain of with these names and your familiarity with ancient cultures and what I could get out of you regarding these names,
Well,
if anything.
well, the thing is, they are regions, and the fact that a couple of them are from Turkey would indicate to me that these scales didn't originate with necessarily with the Greeks, but with the people living in Turkey. So these might be like Hittite scales.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Thanks for that. Anything I could get on anything I could get on that is beneficial. So thanks for that.
That makes me think of this, right? For like in our education system, right? Think about how often you hear the Greeks or the Romans and how unoften you hear anything about the Turks, right? Turks were a big deal.
Really?
Yeah. But
yeah, they were. Absolutely. Absolutely, they were.
That bias, that skew, that erasure of one and the overemphasis on the other narrative. And I won't say the other reality or the other, I'm just talking about the stories, the narratives, the attributions, right? Man, I there's just something like too convenient, too magical, right? About everything came from the Greeks and the Romans. You know, we owe it all to them. Come on. And at the expense of everybody else.
Right. We're forgetting about the Turks and the Phoenicians and everyone else.
Yeah. And it's even like a struggle to go, yeah, but what about the Egyptians, y'all? They were pretty cool, right? Oh, I guess so, yeah.
Okay, so here's a screen capture. Again, Charles, this is from your video, The Forgotten, Crown Jewels of Atlantean Nobility. I think this is from the same video. As you see, on the left side of the split image is what looks like a medieval padlock or whatever, okay?
What? Yeah.
I noticed that it resembles the handbag that is carried by not only the Anunnaki, but also the Mayan, because it has the same shape and structure. It has that same flared bottom, and I see a striking similarity between this.
Yep. So that is a reliquary for storing the ancient artifacts of a saint, but as a result, it would be locked up. So I guess that's why it looks like a padlock. As to what something occurred to me, you need keys to get into a padlock. Are these handbags? Are these the way they used to carry around the keys to the city or something like that? The keys to the gates of the city as a kind of symbolism, or is it a symbol of the lock on the city? Because the Romans used padlocks, but we don't really know how far back they go. And the Roman padlocks were not, they looked like a primitive version, a very primitive version of what we were using, but they were essentially the same. They had handcuffs as well, metal handcuffs, the same as we do. It all goes to the Romans. So is it a similar type of thing? Absolutely it is, because the Irish did travel to America. That must be true, and because there's so much similarity. See in that video that I showed that. See that picture of the jewelry? I showed that to a friend who said, "Oh yes, it looks very Inca or Mayan," you know, and they didn't even know I was talking about Irish stuff, and that's Irish. So,
I remember you said that in your video.
Yeah, and that bag, it is a container. It's a type of container. Is it a lock?
It's important, otherwise it wouldn't be on this pictograph right there. It wouldn't be if it wasn't an important element, it wouldn't be shown again and again and again all across the entire world, from Anunnaki symbols and carvings all the way to the South American Mayans.
The answer will be somewhere in the mythology. In some mythology, it'll say that some character carried around something with him all the time, and we just got to find it.
Oh, just when we solved one mystery, up crops another.
Yeah, every answer brings more questions.
I thought we were going to be able to retire.
You were correct, Charles. That is a rattlesnake in your video. This is a screen capture from your video as well, I think. And by the way, I was lucky enough. I did take vacation in Mexico, and I visited the Olmec heads and the Mayan temples and 3 separate Mayan ruins from Teotihuacan to Palenque to Chichen Itza. So I was lucky enough to visit them myself. But nevertheless, this is without a doubt this serpent that this man is sitting inside of, clearly at the very tail. This is a rattlesnake, which are not indigenous of this area of the world. But I also want to point out that the very top of the serpent has this little tuft, which is representative of the phoenix. So when you see an eagle, for instance, on the back of a dollar bill, the American dollar bill, or when you see what should be an eagle, I would urge you to pay very close attention to make sure that there's a little tuft of feather on the back of the skull, like right here where my mouse is flipping. And that indicates the difference between an eagle and a phoenix.
Oh. By the way, he's also in a flying machine, because the Olmecs might be part Chinese, and the Chinese dragon has no wings, yet it flies through the air anyway, and sort of surrounding him like a sort of capsule. So it could be a way of depicting some ancient astronaut.
The Olmecs are without a doubt Chinese. Their lips, the carvings of their depictions of their faces, without a doubt, anybody with 2 brain cells can look at those images and say, this is from China. The lips, the cheeks, the eyes, everything about the facial features are absolutely Asian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And I would in my comparative analysis between Mayan artifacts, Mayan script, and then I have a book somewhere called Dynastic China. I opened this up, and jade masks, various motifs, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, this looks so similar to Mayan motifs that there's definitely a connection, undeniable connection there. It's, again, we're up against this idea of the academic historians. Why don't they want to explore that story? Why don't they want to give that even a possibility or a second look? Maybe some are. Maybe I'm not aware of cutting edge scholarship that's happening in academia right now around that, but I haven't really come across it. Not that I'm, actively looking every day or anything, but if anybody knows more, I'd love to know more.
There are some papers which have been published about this, saying that there are similarities with the Chinese, but the problem is there are too many papers published, and it all gets buried, and everyone's concentrating on their own work, basically. And the fact is that even if you provide evidence, in order to change the existing paradigm, you need overwhelming evidence. The evidence needs to engulf everybody, and that's the only time that the dogma will change. So I guess that there is some evidence. Well, in fact, there's a huge amount of evidence, but I guess people are not going to be convinced until there's no way out of it, until until the evidence is absolutely 10,000%.
Right.
And only then will the dogma change. And that's why they're reluctant, and they won't say it's Chinese.
Now, is it me? Am I crazy? Or does this thing over top of this character's head right here, is that almost look similar to the Ark of the Covenant in size and shape and form? Perhaps. Am I stretching? Am I reaching? this thing over his
Might be within
head.
reach.
In that it's rectangular.
If it's a rectangle, it must be the ark.
It's a rectangle. There it is. We're done.
Boom! Dropping the mic.
There might be something to it because the Japanese also have an Ark of the Covenant in their Shinto rituals. They carry around an ark, and so they have preserved some ancient Eurasian tradition of carrying this thing around. So, and the fact that the Japanese have it as well, that tells me that if it's spread out in space, it's spread out in time. So the ark thing must be incredibly ancient. It must go way back. So if the Japanese have it, why not these guys? You know, it's only an ocean sail away. As for that thing being the ark, who knows?
Well, that makes sense because if they have a tradition of carrying around an ark and there's a link between the Mayans and the Chinese, then there's our connection right there. So as we wrap up this conversation,
can I just add something before we wrap it up? GP at Greatest Potential had a great comment. He said it's an ad for a Mayan Taco Bell drive-through.
Awesome.
Or an ancient ad.
We love GP. Greatest Potential. We love you. Awesome. Good comment. Okay. Oh, got a tear in my eye. Good one.
It's important to laugh, people. It's important to laugh.
All right. Well, you took me completely off topic. Okay. So what was I going to say? The link between the Chinese carrying around this thing relative to the ark, and here it is, somewhat in I would say an Art Deco depiction or a stylized version. Potentially could be something similar, the same thing. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. I mean, definitely he's carrying the handbag. Without a doubt, that's the same handbag that we see depicted on the Anunnaki artwork.
And also
the Sumerian.
Pamela on the comments has pointed out that he's wearing a bit of a kilt. So
he is.
That's the Egyptian connection. That's the Irish-Scottish connection, because of course the Irish are the Scots. Mm-hmm. That's ancient Ireland right there as well. So, I mean, they would have been the Olmecs would have been a fusion between. See, just as the Romans were a fusion between the Latin tribes of Italy, the Trojans or whoever was coming over, these guys are a fusion as well, and there would have to be pre-Viking and pre-Celtic aspects mixed in with them as well.
So, in conclusion, is it fair to say with full confidence? I would say yes. I'll put to you guys to answer for yourselves, but particular this handbag, which is virtually identical to the one in Babylonian and Sumerian depictions. This handbag, the shape of it with the flared out bottom, the little looping, it's obviously a key portion of this particular carving. Just like this locket or lock that looks in similar shape and style, just like the supposed Anunnaki and Babylonian and Sumerian carvings. You guys think it's fair to say that there was once a worldwide civilization that was well communicated with each other and well traveled and well traded and well familiar with each other all around the whole world?
I'd give it about a 98.7 probability.
I think so. I think so. I don't know about a probability number that I would give to it, but lately I've been looking into a lot of the work that Jan Irvin is doing around ancient Tartaria and the destruction and erasure of what may have actually been the largest empire that the world has ever seen, and actually been around fairly recently. And I think I'm starting to make connections. I haven't heard him make this connection, but I'm starting to make this connection that this may actually be the Atlantis that we're looking for. And the reason I started thinking about this way is I'm putting together a couple ideas. One of them is, you know, if Atlantis was buried by a flood or a deluge, right? Maybe this flood actually means, maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe it's a metaphor for, like, in the way that you say you're underwater, you're in debt, meaning the financial system flooded the world, right? And we're all underwater. We're all in Atlantis, except Atlantis has been flooded by maritime admiralty law and these and commerce.
Oh, I'm glad you said maritime admiralty law, because everything about our entire banking system, everything phonetically and etymologically about our banking system absolutely refers to a geological aspect in terms of, like, for instance, a bank is a bank of a river. There are river banks.
Currency.
And a bank controls the currency. And we have current, like current in a river and current in the ocean. And the ocean is also known as the sea. So we have currency. So that's our money, and the bank controls the currency. So the river bank holds back the currency. Everything about I could go on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Just like Jordan Maxwell, I could go on and on and on and on. I fully understand the whole concept of all of the etymological links between our banking system, our money system, our current debt system. Like you said, we're underwater. It's all about water. When a ship pulls into a harbor, a ship contains goods. And before anything is unloaded from that ship, there has to be what's known as a certificate of manifest. This is our birth certificate. When a ship is parked, it's known as being in her birth. And a ship is always a female, because a female is the one who gives birth. A female is the one who breaks her water when she gives birth.
Aaron,
it's all about females, water, birth. It's all about bringing manifest something that is here that wasn't here before. Like when a ship pulls into a harbor, pulls into her birth, certificate of manifest. Like today, if you were to ship from China to America a Toyota pickup truck, before it unloads from the ship, the certificate of manifest details exactly what is on that ship, because I'm talking about the color of the car, what size, what make, what model, what year, the tires. Every detail is documented on the certificate of manifest, otherwise known as the birth certificate, because the ship is in her birth. And then the manifest, to manifest means to bring something into being that wasn't here before. And that's what ships do. They bring things here that weren't here before. I could go on and on and on. I need to shut up.
It's a really deep topic. I think it's a topic for an entire other show.
Yes, I agree.
I just wanted to make that one point and sort of connect it to our discussions with Charles about us working hard and being passionate about trying to figure out what all happened in ancient history. I just wanted to put this one sort of idea out there that it's quite possible that that these lengths of time that we're talking about, or that we're encouraged to think about in terms of tens of thousands of years, maybe this ancient stuff wasn't all that long ago. Maybe the change that we underwent was so radical and so perniciously twisted that it caused this false dichotomy where you're actually looking too far in the past or too far out into speculative ideas. Not you personally, I'm saying we end up looking, and so we end up missing the more sort of obvious answers. And that would be the point of doing this degree of deception. You know, so that we don't get grounded again, right? We're always underwater. We don't ever find the ground or the land again. So,
well, I think it was an interesting point that you brought up a moment ago, Bart, about Atlantis potentially being what otherwise would be known as Tangia, or the main continent, before the continents broke apart. That's an interesting aspect. One
no, I didn't say that. No, it's Tartaria or Tartary.
Tartaria.
And this was an ancient, and no, not Pangea, not Tangia.
Well, I understand, but my brain went automatically based on what you said. I equated it to the time when all the continents were as one, which we know as Pangea, right?
Right. I think that that's a boondoggle as well. I don't think that ever. I think that that's totally speculative. That's super speculative.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, just like I said, no, yay.
Well, that's
more shows to do.
I do think it's interesting that Plato wrote of Atlantis, and he dated, and now Plato was a couple of thousand years ago, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Plato wrote of Atlantis, and he dated Atlantis to be 9,600 years before his own time. Now, if we add 2,000 years, which would have been Plato's time, to our time, that's 11,600 years. And I'm sure Charles has lots to say about the 11,600 year period from now being a period of a massive cataclysm, massive change. 11,600 years, between 11,600 years and 13,000 years ago, there were apparently asteroid strikes or something that really changed this whole planet of ours, which is the basis for most of the stuff that we're talking about today. The Bible, the whole scripture, the whole story, our whole history. There's no doubt geologically that 11,600 years ago, plus up to about 13,000 years ago, there was a huge upheaval of whatever was going on Earth came to a sudden, or at least a fairly sudden, between 13,000 to 11,600, a relatively cataclysmic change, relatively sudden.
I have doubts. You said there was no doubt. I was saying I have doubts.
All right, smartass.
Just, yeah. I'm gonna bow out and not bow out. I gotta go pee. But talk amongst yourselves, or are we ready to wrap it up?
Pipe up, Charles. We're about to wrap this up. What do you think?
Well, it could have been a pole shift. You know, I made a few videos about the Earth shrinking, because if the Earth's expanding and it's got a sun-like thing inside it, like a smaller planet inside it, which can suddenly change size, could that cause a pole shift? Could the pole? I think the pole shifts are mistaken for ice ages. And yeah, there've been a lot of catastrophes. Why did all the megafauna disappear? And I include the giants in the megafauna as well. Why did they all vanish? And why did we conquer the Earth? Or did we actually reconquer the Earth? I mean, look at the Amazon. The Amazon is out of control, and usually when an ecosystem goes out of control, it's because of introduced weeds. So who brought the plants to the Amazon? Where did they come from? And what's going on with that? I mean, I think the Amazon itself is a sign that there was a catastrophe in the past. And before that, there were more catastrophes. Look at the Carolina Bays 30,000 years ago plus. Look at the Toba eruption. And all these things have interrupted some technological era, and it's so hard to pinpoint that time.
Charles, it has been absolutely fantastic. There is so much to talk about on this subject, and I just can't wait to get you back on for another 3-hour episode where
awesome.
We can go.
I'd love to.
And we can go on in any direction at all. I mean, literally, there's just so much hidden ancient history that needs to be explored. This is the subjects that we really need to be talking about. This is the important stuff. I think that our history has been hidden from us. I think there's a concerted effort to hide it. I mean, if you just look at how modern Egyptology handles the evidence and how overtly oppressive they are to new ideas, and how they harshly push these crazy, crazy ideas that make no sense whatsoever. There's certainly a concerted effort to keep us from knowing who we are and where we came from. This is a subject that is endlessly fascinating, and I thank you for your time. Thank you for who you are and what you're doing, and I just can't wait to have you back on again.
Thanks very much, Aaron, and thanks, Bart, and thanks, Amy. And it's been a pleasure to be here and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Oh, hey, we love it. We love it. You're a joy to have on.
And we got to let you talk more and show more next time we have you. So
yes,
get ready. Get ready. But you know what? What you represent is the stuff that we all love so much. And so, you know, it gets me talking. But I figure next time let's pull back a little bit and give you more space on the stage.
Okay. Sure.
Well, now's your chance, Charles. You're on the stage. Final thoughts, everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's been a great discussion. Well, what did we talk about? We talked about the Ark. We talked about the pyramids. I think the pyramids are totally fit into the Ark, because that pyramids are high technology. They knew the Earth measurements. They put them into the pyramid. The Ark, whatever device it was, it might even have been a completely different device or set of devices, which they later associated with this box that they called the Ark, which was maybe some other device. That's been lost through history. We related that to the Inca stones. The Inca stones are the same as the Egypt stones, except for they seem to be generally made out of a different substance, maybe a different type of geopolymer. And I think that was a great discussion, actually. And we also looked into the synchronicities, and that thing at the end, that was really interesting with the synchronicities or whatever they were with the banker terms. I'd never thought of that before. And actually, if you go to London and the city of London, which is the Roman part of London, and that's where all the banking is located, and that is on the riverbank of the Thames. So you go to the bank, it means bench, and they say it means bench in Italian, but maybe it means going to the riverbank to do deals. That's where they had their fairs and trading and markets. You know, we don't have a proper picture of the world. We just have what the books tell us, but what the books tell us is what someone told us a few hundred years ago when there was no internet, no one knew anything. So I mean, there you go. I mean, our definitions are just as valid, in my opinion. So. Yeah.
So many bottlenecks, I would say. There's so many bottlenecks. And
I could go on for hours talking about the etymological links between banking and the actual physical reality of water as maritime banking is laid out, and how it describes our current system. Like when you go to court, for instance, it's the same as being on the bow of a ship. Just as a captain of a ship can marry somebody, you have to go to court to be married. And the court system, the structure, the physical structure of a court is set up just like the helm of a ship, where there are these little gates that you have to walk through. And then there's the captain of the ship who makes all the final decisions, just like a judge. On and on and on. The etymological links between water and birth and ship and shipping and current and currency and our money system. This is a deep subject. It just goes, it's an endless subject of etymological links between our language and how we use words and how we think of our structure of our society. And it's just a fascinating study. And to me, it's an endless thing to talk about. It's fascinating.
Nice courting ritual. Very good. Yes.
That's amazing. You say it's similar to the bow of a ship. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
And a church, an altar. An altar, the pews.
Oh, you know,
Well, my
go ahead, Amy.
you want my
Final
thoughts? Swift. You're breaking up for me.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Amy.
Hold your thought for 1 second, Amy. We'll get final thoughts in just a moment. Charles, I wanted to say real quick, I thought your analogy on one of your most recent videos, a couple of days or maybe a week or so ago, on the Gothic architecture, I thought that was pretty eye-opening. I thought that when you said that the Neolithic architecture seems to only appear in theaters, when we look at modern architecture relating to Gothic architecture, like if you look at a modern theater, it tends to mimic Gothic architecture, and that seems to be the only place we see it is in theaters. I thought that was a great analogy, that the Gothic designs and from the Romans, from the Etruscans, who you thought might have got it from the Atlanteans, I thought was really brilliant analogy. And I just love the way you think outside the box, and that's just why we love you so much. So I just wanted to give you another pat on the back for that. And again, Charles, thanks for who you are, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much, Aaron, and yeah, love your words, and love who you are too, and all of you guys. Yeah.
Love always.
Amy, go ahead with your final thought. You're not breaking up. Go ahead, do it now.
Just really fast, thank you, Charles. And for anybody who would like to solve for the psychopaths in control on our planet, please feel free to visit my playlist on either my main channel or my backup channel, Amaterasu Solar and Amaterasu Solar again. And lastly, visit my site that it's a forum, tapurit.boards.net, where we can discuss solutions and how to fix these problems on our planet. Did you hear all of that?
We got it. Yes.
Woohoo!
It came through, honey.
It was like everybody be super still. And just hoping that
This whole night, I'm thinking most people didn't hear anything I said, and I had patches, long patches, where I'd hear from all of you.
Well, we've had a lot of that.
I don't know.
We've been experiencing a lot of audio disruptions lately. I have no explanation for it other than we need to upgrade to that 5G death ray system that they want to implement. So,
or electricity, just electrical currency.
Charles, give us your final thoughts, buddy.
I think that the Ark goes back to the time of those Cyclopean architecture, which is underneath every huge structure, every huge castle. It's just buried. We're not allowed to dig there. These are all national monuments. No one's allowed to touch them. Even the archaeologists are not allowed to go in there, and they wouldn't think to anyway. And all this stuff in the Bible, it's tremendously ancient science fiction. I think synchronicities, like we mentioned with the arc, the electrical arcing, all this stuff, they help us to make discoveries, because there's a pattern of knowledge going through the universe. Like it's like light, but it's like on the knowledge wavelength. And these archetypes that we've looked at, the symbols, people pick up symbols all the time. Perhaps they're picking up from the universe, and they repeat the same symbols throughout history. We see it again and again and again. Our brains interpreting it as a kind of symbol. And we even see them in this Neolithic artwork from America, like in your avatar, Aaron. So we see alchemical symbols, even though these guys surely weren't alchemists, or maybe they were. So yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
Well, brilliant, Charles. You are, without a doubt, we need more people like you who are willing to step outside of the academic box, as it were, and be brave enough to think independently and tie together multiple disciplines, as we've discussed before. Because when you put yourself in a box of just studying one thing for decades and decades, then you don't have the understanding of other disciplines to make the sort of connections that we are trying to make tonight, sort of in the way that I screen shared earlier with the musical scales and the way that they are labeled with the Doric and the Dorian scale, the Doric method of architecture, and then there's the Aeolian, Mixolydian, the Lydian, and just you just have to cross pollinate these disciplines, and without being able to do that, we're not going to get anywhere. So I applaud you for the way that you think endlessly, and I just cannot pat you on the back hard enough for the way that you approach things. So just thanks so much.
Well, thank you guys, and I love you guys too. And all the same back to you.
Okay, guys, with that, we are well over our 3-hour limit. So thank you all for being with us. It looks like we might have one or two new people in the chat. And forgive me, but I have just been engrossed in this conversation. I have not been paying attention to the chat. We have a couple of regulars, World Peas and Greatest Potential, and the Big P I see is in here. Thank you all for being here. And all the new people that have showed up, and thank you for stopping by on Bart's channel. And I'm so sorry that I'm not able to host it on my main channel. You know how it is. YouTube likes to be Orwellian with their ban hammer, and it is what it is, you guys. I will not even be able to upload this show on my channel for 2 weeks. I just got my second strike this morning. And I'm going to be very limited as to what I'm going to be able to do with this channel for at least 2 weeks. So just thank you all for being here. Adelaide, thank you. I just see you left a comment. I didn't know you were here. I wasn't even watching the chat. I've just been so busy with my notes, trying to pay attention to the conversation. So for anybody that I have missed, oh, and by the way, Bart, you need to start handing out some wrenches. That's just standard procedure for our chats. Because
you know what? We had no issues. We had not a single troll. I've been actually keeping everybody was awesome, and yeah, there was not a single troll, not a single disparaging remark.
Well, we weren't talking about hoax events and hoax shootings and things like that. So
yeah.
You just wait, Bart. You just wait. You're going to get trolled.
Oh, no, I get it. But yeah, totally forgot about the wrench thing. But, lucky for us, I don't say nobody would have gotten wrenched today.
Well, thanks, guys. And thank you, Charles. And I just absolutely, Charles, I cannot wait to speak to you again.
Yep. Let's do it again anytime. And yeah, catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks again, Charles. It was really a pleasure to be with you today.
Bart, are you ready to take us out with the outro?
No.
Good job.
I'm sitting here thinking how badly I have to pee and how I've been holding on. I should have popped out. I didn't know you were going to just keep talking and talking and talking. Oh, wait, I should have known. All right.
Well, in case anybody hasn't noticed, we're a little less than professional around here. We're just a bunch of Joe Hosers doing our best to sort out this crazy world we live in. And, this topic of ours that we've covered tonight, our ancient history, where we come from, is, I think, probably one of the most important topics that anybody could be discussing.
Yeah. Let's do more like this. This is far more uplifting, and I think the solutions present themselves from talking about more uplifting things. Now we got to get down into the trenches, of course, but yeah, spring has sprung. That's my or spring is almost here. It's about the spring.
Well, I was really pessimistic today because of my strike, that YouTube saw fit to go and strike a video that I had deleted a month ago. I thought that was really disparaging, and I was pretty depressed all day. And this conversation has been brilliant and uplifting, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, it was great. All right, here comes the outro, y'all.
All right, you guys. Love you. See you next time.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.